I was when you wrote it, the thing with the cross on the below.
Always crossing the line.
We're done.
Alright. Tēnā koutou katoa, welcome to the Waitai Community Board Information Session. I'd like to join me with in our opening karakia. Whakataka te au ki te sona, ia mā kina ki uta, ia mā taratara ki tai, ia ki ana te askura, ia i huka, ia au, tika ngāwiri ora. Thank you, everybody. We have apologies from Greg Mitchell for absence. Any other apologies? No other apologies. Pardon? You don't need to move it, it's just
Anyway.
but thank you. Yeah, it would be my preference, given that it would be my preference that we could get out of here by 6, if we can. But I understand that there's a lot on the agenda, and that we need to fit in. Please bear in mind that we need to ask questions, but let's keep them, make sure that they're questions and that they're specific to what's on the agenda rather than general questions. That would be helpful. So the first item we have on the agenda is Linwood Park Draft Concept Plan. Megan, Julie and Toby, we have.
Kim Swarbrick and Megan Carpenter.
You want to give us a presentation and then take questions?
Sure. Yep.
Right, so I ask members to hold questions until you either come to the end or you give me a look like.
There's 2 parts to the presentation. Do I need to turn this on?
Yes, please.
So red light to come on.
Yep.
2 parts to the presentation, so we can do questions on the council components of the presentation first, and then I'll run through the sports lighting application and the pavilion application we've had from clubs, so we could do the land ownership questions at the end. There's a couple of faces here I don't recognise, so sorry, I'll introduce myself. I'm Kim Swarbrick, I'm Senior Parks and Recreation Planner. And
Kia ora koutou, ko Megan toku ingoa. I'm Team Leader, Parks, Planning and Recreation.
Is it working? Is it on the side?
What do? I push the...
Slide it up if it's on.
No.
Okay.
Oh, you do like that? Okay, I didn't know if it was going to like switch. You want to do that? Maybe change the arrow.
Okay, so the presentation was attached to the cover sheet report too, so I'm hoping that everyone's had a chance to read that. And it's quite long, so I'll try and skip through it really fast so that you've got the maximum time to ask questions. Yep. So purpose of the briefing: to advise Community Board of all the work we've got coming up on Linwood Park, and the upcoming public consultation on all of those, plus the applications that we've received. So which one is it? Yeah, great. That's Linwood Park as it is now, so a little bit of background. It's located at 252 Linwood Avenue. Features already in the park include a wildflower trial area. We've got 3 league fields, we've got half basketball court. But once we do that configuration, that half basketball court is in poor condition, and we have now built a full court just on the adjacent land between the park and the library. There's a climbing net, public toilets, 2 play spaces, skate area, athletics track, tag football is played there. We have 36 general lights already on the park of varying ages and quality, plus 4 existing sports lights. There's 1 picnic table, and there's 11 seats. So the new change rooms have recently been completed. We've got capital projects coming up on the site, which includes the skate park renewal and play spaces as well. The Celebration Lions Athletic Club are in the process of establishing on the site. We've got urban forest plans for the site. There's a Linwood Canal enhancement going on as well. Pathway design lines are changing with the addition of the new park developments, and also with the new ones that we've put on there, we're going to change again. So we've been having a look at the pathways and the links and connections to community as well. In November 2025, staff received a full application from Linwood Rugby League Club to install a new sports pavilion, and the lease will go with that as well. They've also put in sports lighting applications, and there's a Linwood neighbourhood plan going on at the same time. So heaps of items there, and with all of that, it was felt that it was a really good time to start reviewing Linwood Park as a whole park rather than the piece by piece meal approach that's been going on. So this is the new draft concept plan, which has been developed by Exterior-scapes. Julie, a landscape architect, is sitting here with us tonight. So she's put a lot of hard work into this, and there's been lots of iterations to get it to this point. We're super stoked to bring this to you tonight because it has been a journey, and really looking forward to your feedback as well. So the main features or changes for the site: the skate park and the play area, we're proposing to relocate to the central area. Does this have a pointer on it?
Let me do the pointing.
Yeah, sure. So this area in here would be, skate park is currently there. Play spaces are here and over here. We'll bring them all together into that central area to activate the park centre. The main pathway alignment will be adjusted and straightened. So this section in here doesn't quite have that configuration at the moment. We found that one of the main desire lines is between the residential housing down here, straight across to get to the shopping centre over this side. So we've widened this pathway and straightened it out to improve the visibility and casual surveillance through above. There's proposed new trees on the site, and they are the colour that is the more khaki colour. So this grouping here, that colour represents the new trees. Most are part of the urban forest planting. There's a new fitness station. So we haven't had a fitness station on this park before. This is proposed in here, in that block. Some of the research we did showed that having adult on-site fitness equipment grouped together made it more social and more inclusive for community members to do that together. On to the next page. Okay. We had a SIPTED assessment done at the same time as we were doing the new concept plan. A couple of things have come out of that SIPTED. 3 large existing trees in the middle of the park. That's these ones here. They're very tall. I think they're macrocarpa. The SIPTED report picked up on having possibly an assessment of those canopies may be lifted, and just to make sure that there's good surveillance through this area here. The Aldwins Road entrance trees, this is the next photo down here. It's quite a bit of low-level shrubbery in the back behind these trees, and it was felt through the SIPTED report that that could be tidied up and cleaned up so that it wasn't creating places where people could hide. The SIPTED report also felt a reconfiguration of the lighting would be very beneficial for the park, and that we could make great improvements on that. The quick prompt removal of any graffiti and really caring for the park and keeping it tidy would foster that guardian mindset so that everyone takes more of an ownership in the park itself. And just on notes on the SIPTED report, the concept plan was developed with the SIPTED principles as a core consideration. By clarifying the access, movement, improving surveillance and sightlines, clustering activities in well-overlooked locations, and establishing a planting edge and facility framework that supports natural surveillance. The concept aims to minimise opportunities for crime and antisocial behaviour and improve perceived and actual safety for all users. So that was first and foremost when we were looking at that new layout. So the skate park. The images there are of the existing skate park. It's out of date. It does need renewing. Skate styling of features has changed since this one was put in. Staff are looking for options for quality beginner and intermediate elements to replace this with. The reconfiguration of that skate park and its location is required so that we can accommodate the sports pavilion onto the park, which would be in that location that's currently occupied by skate. This is a funded capital project, and I've got a page including here. We'll look at the funds. After this concept plan is approved, we would then work with the designer and community to work out exactly what elements will go into that site, and there'll be another round of engagement with those stakeholders and all the work is initiated. Celebration Lions Athletic Club have expressed a desire to come to the park as well. We've already incorporated the running track, you can see there in the top photo. They've also requested 2 additional throwing circles. These are located in that bottom image, one there and one down there. Staff are happy to incorporate that on site and there's plenty of room to do so. If, however, they are wanting other structural additions such as long jump pads or high jump, things like that, then they will have to make an application and apply for release for those. Play spaces. So it's my understanding that some of the elements in the play spaces have not held up well over time, and the maintenance is becoming challenging and has it due for renewal. So our proposal is to bring, it's currently 2 play sites plus the climbing net, and we propose to bring that all together and incorporate it into the one play space. This is also a capital funded project. Pathways and sightlines. I've covered that already. What I will say though is that 2 changed pathways here. There's a new one along the edge of Linwood Ave here that we've incorporated just as a little link, and so looking at beefing up this one here. And what that does is it creates a perimeter walk around the entire park, which you can't currently complete. And we found that that's been quite desirable in other parks. So I thought there's an opportunity here to incorporate that. There's partial funding for pathways to be improved, but there's not significant enough funding there to do all the pathways in one hit, so that will go into that. Fitness station. Did jump. The fitness station concentrates that activity into that area there, and it was felt that this space in here was a nice link between Te Po and the sports fields and keeping that active site for the side of the park. This is currently unfunded, so that'll be one of the projects we need to put a bid into LTP for. Lighting. Okay, the lighting is complex. There's a bunch of different lights there at the moment. This site around here has lighting for the Rapanui Cycleway, and it was probably the most recent lighting established on site. Along this pathway down here, you've got some very old lights, and I'm not even sure that they currently are in working order. And around the sports field, we've got a couple of existing sports lights that are belonging to Linwood Rugby League Club. So we had an audit done of the lights, and the dark maroon, I think it is, in here, some of those lights that they've recommended for relocation or upgrading so that we can have a better pattern of lights across the park. Current council policy is that we don't normally don't light parks because we don't want to encourage people in there after dark. And if there's a reasonable route around the park, then we won't light the park. In this case, however, there's already existing lights there. Plus, we've already got a scenario where there are young people, youth, children, and adults in the park for their sports training activities. And when their sports lights go out, they need a safe retreat out of the park back into their community. So it was felt that for this particular park that it was warranted. I've just included the photo of that light pole there. It's owned by the club, but it's very close to, in position to where they want to build the sports pavilion. They're hoping that they can build around that without affecting the light, but I've just raised that and itemised it with the club so that they're aware of that. And hopefully they can successfully build around it. The toilet block, or existing toilet block. I had a good talk with Maria Adamski about this toilet block, and potentially on this end of the toilet block, you've got the two toilets in this end, and on the back end is the changing rooms. So I had a chat with Maria, potentially we could turn or make both of these toilets multi-use accessible toilets and turn one of them around so that it faces the new play space when it's put on site. And in the back here, there is potential to assess whether those change rooms are still required as change rooms once the new change rooms are operable, and we're seeing what the demand is for those. The other option is that they could be repurposed and turned into storage for either the athletics club or the Linwood Rugby League Club. That belongs to the Linwood Rugby League Club. They're using it for storage currently, and that's temporary on site until they build the pavilion. The urban forest tree planting, we've already had a chat about the trees. Post trees that are going onto the site or potentially could fit onto the site. Also highlighted a couple of trees that may need removal. We're actually hoping that they don't. It would be nice to retain all the trees that we can, but these three trees on the bottom image are also very close to where the new pavilion is being built, because you can see the current edge of the skate area and the light pole that I showed you earlier. The club are going to endeavour to do everything they can to retain these trees, but they have been made aware if they need to be removed, that will be a report back to community. Permission to remove the trees. The other one falls to us. There is a tree, quite a nice specimen tree in here. To achieve that alignment of the pathway, it may need to be removed. But once we get into the detailed design phase, we'll look at that really closely and see if we can align this around it. And funding. So I'm going to run through.
Yeah, I'll just do this for the mindful of time. I think this lists all the funding that there is available for the project. So the skate and the play space and urban forest, as well as some of the landscaping and paths, are all currently funded. There's a couple of things that we'll need to look to get long-term plan funding, such as toilet block and the fitness stations. But we can keep in contact with the board as the project progresses about the ins and outs of all that funding, and it is quite detailed there if you want to read it at a later date. Go on to the next slide.
So for engagement, we're going to be pulling out all the usual engagement activities, signage on site, let's talk, social media. We can pop material into the swimming pool and libraries. And we're also working with the club to see if there's any community events, days coming up that we might be able to link in with as well. The time frame we're looking at is listed there. So presenting to you now in April, consultation, we're hoping to get out it's probably struggling to get it out end of April, but certainly during May. A hearing process to follow, followed by a community board decision, so we'll be coming back to you in August. And then following that date, the skate park and play space projects can proceed and the club can carry on with their plans to install the. Okay. Are there any questions about the concept plan?
I just have a question. Well, a couple of things first for us, a question. So with the fitness equipment, some feedback was given to me around fitness equipment that for a lot of people that the gym equipment type stuff isn't, like for athletes especially, the gym equipment isn't quite right, like because it's not really going to challenge them very much. But so the calisthenics type of equipment is preferred. So I guess in this particular location where we've got quite a few athletes using it, some calisthenics type stuff would be really good.
We've often done a mix of both, like you kind of do the calisthenics, I can't even say that word. Calisthenics in a group, and you might do like 3 of those kind of movement ones beside it, which are a bit more inclusive for a wider range of people. And then the hard out workouts can be adjacent, so you can kind of progress from one to the other, or just use one or the other.
Yeah, and the other thing was to just go the lights and the application for that process. We just need to try and sit down with the cares and sort that out.
Yeah, so I've got some information on that. We'll come to it in a second.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
And the other one, before I go to the rest of the board, just in terms of, so obviously we know that the cares have had a long connection with the park, and that they're part of that community. What is the process though for new organisations that haven't had a like when you're looking at a club to take, so in a general sense, a club to come into a space, what is the process that's used to do that? Because I'm just, it's the first that I've heard of the athletics.
Yeah, so you're meaning like, so with how does the athletics club come to this park?
Yeah, so we have an athletic club which was at Avon Park.
We have a team at council in Rec and Sport who are our sports liaison advisors, and they work with all the associations, so the regional bodies of all of those groups, and then they allocate the sports fields accordingly. So in this situation, Avon Park Athletics, we're at Avon Park, and then all the work that's happened there has meant that field's no longer available. So their regional body came to Rec and Sport and said where could they go. They gave them some options, and Linwood was their preferred. It's kind of close to their current network of members. So then they were allocated that space in summer because it was available.
Right, that answers that question.
So it kind of that's how it all kind of works. They all go through the regional bodies to us, and then they get allocated space.
Okay. And that's according to the sports network plan.
Yeah, it's just working with the regional bodies. The sport network plan kind of sits aside that around the development of those fields. Yeah.
All right. So I think a question from Kim, and then was that you, Jan? Yep. So Kim.
Thank you. It looks all very exciting. It's great to see things happening for our youth. Just around the skate parks, and we have one here at Thompson Park. Just part of the stakeholders in that. So the police and the youth workers of the area have been involved with the repositioning of it, or the new location. Just checking on them to make sure that it's really good.
That's kind of probably like the next step. So we haven't even, the project has funding, it has a project manager allocated, and the next steps are to what's next.
Right.
Yep, so right at the start.
And just the other thing around the funding, if see skate parks at the top, which is really good because I'm really keen on skate parks, but also with the paths, because some of the paths are just partially funded. Would safety and that visual aspect, would they need to align?
Yeah, we'd prioritise the ones that are adjacent to those spaces.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's hard. It's been hard, Kim, to figure out exactly everything keep falling into place. So kind of behind the scenes working out the budgets as well. Yeah.
Sounds like a great job.
Yanni and then Kelly.
Thank you. I was just wondering, a bit to Paul's point, how much engagement have you done with previous sports clubs that have used the park to determine what you're proposing?
So what do you mean by previous sports clubs?
Like,
So,
so I know football used to have some junior fields there. I presume cricket used to play there, maybe still do. I'm just trying to understand what are the other sports clubs that have used the space and how's their input being put into this?
So that's our next phase as well. So a lot of clubs are already aware of the proposal, but through the engagement phase, we'll be working more closely with all user groups on the park, so not just the sports clubs, but everyone, and working with them to make sure that they will all fit together and work well.
So is this going to cater for football like it used to?
They're not currently being allocated to this park that I'm aware of.
Right.
I think that has tag,
Yeah,
but not football.
Is that
So
that
can
kind of
football come along during the process and say, actually, we played football there, we used to have juniors, we need space, we're the biggest club in the, South
it would
Park.
be happening through mainland football and their connection with our Rippon sport team. So-
I understand the process around allocation, but I don't understand the process around design. How do we incorporate the design elements that we're proposing with the needs of the different sports groups?
It could be just a different line marking and sport goal configuration.
No,
and
it's really just going to be green space, and I always sort of say to
Yeah.
groups that we're designing a sports field and it can be whatever we need it to be. So if the rugby league club, for example, in 10 years' time didn't exist, but we had a huge football club that needed the space, then we would just simply allocate to the football club.
Sorry, maybe I should be more specific. I'm looking at field 3 with the athletics track going through the sports fields. That doesn't seem.
So that's a summer allocation, and we're only marking the lines in the summer.
Okay.
In the winter, it just goes back to grass, can be whatever we need it to be in the winter. So there has been conversations with league and football around dual use of that space. At this stage, football haven't requested it through the original body, but there's options for them to be able to.
Yeah.
I want to understand how this fits onto the sports network plan and if there's funding available through that and also through the skateboarding strategy.
So the sports network plan is about future developments, and so Linwood has been, like, there's been some quite new projects there. So the area at the top that you're talking about is the village that's been returned to green space. So that's a new piece of grass, and then the other field has also been recently done up as well. So there's been quite a lot of work done at Linwood Park to accommodate sport.
So things like lighting, which I understand are in the sports network plan.
So lighting is referenced in the sports field network plan, but it's not funded because it's not funded by council. So sports field lighting is funded at this stage by our sports partners, but we reference it in the sports field network plan because we understand that for a lot of sports, obviously they can't participate and they can't train if they don't have sports field lighting there. So there's a direct connection, which is why it's referenced, but it isn't funded.
So just keen to understand a little bit about, have you done any assessment around travel demand and traffic management? So I see in the SIPTED report, there is some discussion about movement and people using different desire lines, but what I don't see is any sort of assessment of parking needs and how people come and how people go.
Yeah, there's
I
a
don't
lot
know
of
if the plan's going to increase the amount of use that's already there.
No, the conversations with the clubs are that when they've had club day there, and we've talked to Po Toi Toi and the staff there as well around that facility, and there hasn't been undue issues with parking. And club day is the biggest day that you'll ever get on the park when the Kias have all of their teams there. But one of the conversations we're now having with our sports communities as well is how they're actually looking to change some behaviours around sport. So how are we promoting the use of active transport for our communities getting to their parks? How are we looking at carpooling? What does the public transport network look like? Just to try and just get people thinking differently, because building more car parks is very challenging when we don't have the land to do that. But yeah, we've got cycleways, we've got public transport, and so our sporting community is starting to do some really good thinking around that and coming up with some good ideas.
And sorry, just final question from me. There used to be a historic rose garden here. Have you had any thought to, other than just the tree planting, what sort of landscaping elements that you might restore, return, might involve the community in some of that as well? Like, I'm just wondering if there's been any consideration to edible planting and or floral type planting.
I suppose we might hear some of that in the engagement, but Kim's been done some work along the canal.
Yeah, we're working with, is it Emily Trinidad? Part of the upgrading Linwood Canal area. And that group's actually looking at doing some fundraising for putting in some low-level shrubbery because we don't want to disturb the sightlines. So they're looking at trying to enhance that area and that pathway that was along the edge with the houses and the canal are. In terms of the old formal rose garden, we gave that quite a bit of consideration to see whether that should be something that's included or put back in. It was felt that the formal rose garden layout perhaps wasn't a great fit with this park. It's more aligned with perhaps a heritage park. And we do have the current wildflower trial area going on in that same position, the same location where the rose garden was. So that wildflower trial will probably continue for another couple of years, I believe.
You, Kelly?
Thanks. My questions are around specifically around the new pavilion application.
Should we talk about that first? Because that's got some more slides about the pavilion.
Oh, have you? Oh,
Yeah.
No, it's good.
Yep.
I might answer all your questions.
Might do. All right, we'll move on. Proposed new pavilion. Yep. So A represents the new council change rooms, which are the construction's finished. The final details are going in there. B represents the proposed location of the new Linwood Rugby League Football Club's pavilion, and that's currently where the skate site is. So this is indicative only. So with the plans that they provided us, we measured that out as being about high 400s, early 500s in terms of size. The reason we didn't have an exact figure was because there was a deck that comes around there outside of the plan and that wasn't measured. So we were saying footprint of up to but no larger than 600 metres squared, which seemed appropriate for the site. The club want that pavilion for increased seasonal sportage use, the club and community engagement, and also to boost the community and family connections. We felt that that aligns pretty well with this community and it's justified. This is about their application. So we discussed the footprint and also the skate park needing to be relocated to accommodate it. Club proposed to build without any tree removal, and the current car parking provision on site. This has been discussed with the club, and they're aware that the parking that's adjacent to that site is actually for the swimming pool. And when we talked to them, they said they're actively encouraging active transport, which is what Angela just said as well. They're trying to promote carpooling, car sharing, and healthy ways of getting club for their sport. The club are not applying for a permanent alcohol license. They said they will do one-off applications if they have special events or occasions or like 100-year celebration of the club, that kind of thing. And the club is responsible for retaining all building and resource consents prior to construction. All costs to be covered by the club, including consents, the site preparation, construction, service connections, preparation of lease documentation, their insurance and ongoing maintenance. So it's all club finance. Their funding seems to come from selling their Elizabeth Road club rooms in 2014. They will also be seeking fundraising and grant applications to boost those funds as well. The lease agreement will be a standard lease agreement that we do similar to or have provided to other league clubs around the city. And I've just put there are some staff concerns with the application, and that was around storage and the confidence in the club to deliver the project, which is improving. They've got all their ducks aligned now and they're doing much better. On the storage one though, I'll just pop this up here. This little cupboard here is currently the only storage that's shown in their pavilion. What I recommended to the club last time we met is that perhaps they push this wall out a little bit in here and create another bit of storage in here. And that would be so that these tables and chairs you can see that are out in this scenario here can be stacked away somewhere neatly and tidy. And then this space lends itself to a lot more community activity. So if there was a yoga class or something like that, then they can book the space via the club and hold their events in there as well. And this one over the side is, of course, the council change rooms. That's just an indication of the footprint and the size. And you can see the deck out the front there. We've got a meeting room included in here, which is good. And kitchen area on this end. And having this decking space out the front will also help with passive surveillance or visually seeing what else is happening in the park for safety. This is a artist montage looking from the field towards the pavilion on the top one and looking from the sports courts, tennis courts, basketball courts through the other way. And that's the east-west elevation. Do please ignore this structure here. I think that was the artist exhibiting a bit of free license. Proposed hours of use. These are in conjunction or very similar to other pavilions around the city. Initially, the club did ask for use of that pavilion. I think it was 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, but we felt it's such an excellent resource for community. It's best to extend those hours so that during the daytime it could be used for groups. Sports lighting application. They applied for 4 sports lights going onto field 1, which is their main competition field, but that's been assessed and we think that the use of that site is going to be okay. If the weather was bad and it was getting heavy use, then there might be the odd occasion where we'd have to potentially close that field so that it could recover enough for the competition. So the club have submitted several versions of the lighting plan. It's taking a little bit of effort to get a plan that it has lux levels compliant with the district plan rules. So Angela and I are actively working with the club to get that resolved, and we think we've got a way to navigate forward now, which is good. Lights will be included in the club's lease documentation and they're proposed for use from 5 till 9 p.m. during the months that are non-daylight saving, and that's the standard time frame. Here are the lights. Field 1 adjacent to Linwood Ave down here, so 4 lights, 25-metre poles, and this site here is 3 lights. Pole height, we're not known just yet, but we'll know very soon. So after consultation, we'll report back to Community Board for approval and decision of the new lease, the proposed pavilion and the sports lighting. We'll compile those all into the one report if we can and bring that back, along with the engagement results and the community review on those projects as well. And the club will require a temporary access licence for tradies and construction coming on site. This is standard with all our parks. Okay. Any questions on that?
Yeah, that's all very exciting. Keen to see it all progress. We are running very short on time, so there are specific questions about this.
Very good. 600 square metres, is that the absolute maximum that they're allowed? Does it matter how they build that? If they were to make the building 600, they were to change anything? No.
So I had a chat with our legal team and our property team, who have indicated that if the club have asked for up to 600 square metres and then the final design comes out smaller, that's fine. If the design was to come out larger, then we'd need to go through this process again.
And it's an odd angle, given the surrounds, is there any particular reason behind that?
Optimum, viewing of the number one field.
Oh,
Yeah, so the other field is sort of a training area, but having it angled like that, it just means that people can be in the building and still be able to see that field.
if they weren't able to, raise the right amount of money to do, so it's their building, they're leasing the land off council. What happens if they can't achieve that? Nothing? Or-
The club's got significant funds themselves that they have on hand, but rugby league as a sport is particularly well positioned to receive funding from a lot of the external funders as well. And they've got some quite good relationships with the likes of Rata.
And just the last thought, looking at the map, I see there's a CCC service centre across the road. A lot of parking that's probably not used on the weekends. Any chance that could be open to them? Is it?
I think they sometimes use it already, don't they?
Oh,
They already use the Smith Street car park.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of
Yeah.
an informal sort of
Yeah.
relationship between that car park and the sports grounds.
is that something that would be easily formalised?
We've also got the Smith Street farm there though,
Smith Street.
the urban farm.
Oh,
Yeah.
right, that's all, thanks.
Right, Yanni and then Celeste, and then we'll get to go to the next item.
Yeah, I'd be keen just to understand more about the cost of the lights. The price on the presentation looks quite on the low side. I'm just having trouble aligning the parking issue that's been raised with the previous presentation. And again, I'm just really concerned knowing that there's a lot of car parking that's going to be removed on Auckland's Road. And that there's a whole bunch of new infill housing that don't have very many car parks in this area. I am just wondering if anyone is looking at the bigger picture around the cycling connections, the traffic movement, etc.
That's probably more for our transport colleagues to look into,
Right.
but we can certainly raise that with them and
You won't be able to control who parks in that swimming pool car park, right? You've got no ability to do that.
There is some restrictions, so they can only park, I think it's for 3 hours.
Yeah, I mean, there's other sites around Taiora Kiwi2, Parakiori, where we have put systems in place to be able to manage the access to those car parks specifically for the recreation participants. So there's a mechanism, I guess, like that we could employ if we needed to.
I guess like my feedback would be around the engagement, because I think you need to spend a lot of time engaging and not just do it how we normally do it. But I like your idea of, going to community events, etc. I did wonder about, we did have a special event when we were doing the poll. So we created like a mini kind of festival with the club, which was quite good. So I wonder, and there's been calls for a light festival come back, if we could think about maybe doing some sort of special event to attract people to the park to give feedback, because I think there will be a diverse range of views on lots of the things that you're putting forward.
Yeah, the club actually have a club day coming up very soon, so we're hoping to connect in with that. And I think that's probably the day where they have the most people on site.
Yeah, cool. And just the final one for me, can we get some information back around the quality of the sports fields? I know it got upgraded, but I don't think it was upgraded very well. It seems to have ongoing issues as well.
So the number one ground, unfortunately, they had a club day. The field wasn't very old and it was a particularly wet day. So there needed to be quite a lot of remediation work that was done on it since then. It's performed really well since they did that work. So, yeah. It's a lot of it depends, it can be seasonal as well, but the club is a lot more aware now of how they need to manage the use of it. And our parks team, it's now that they have the contract and they're on the parks all the time, they're really good at feeding back and giving information around whether they need to lighten the load on the field and things like that. And then we just work really directly with Canterbury Rugby League around where fields are being allocated and games are being allocated.
That's good. All right, final question from Celeste.
Thank you. It's done a huge amount of work. Just two quick ones. How wide is the shed park? The one that's identified as K? Is there like a sort of a minimum width that has to be for a park?
3 and 3 and 3.
Okay, so it'd be quite good. And will it have markings on it in terms of shared space? Is there like best practice for that? In terms of,
I mean,
interested to know a bit more about that. And then in terms of bike parking, will there be some situated in the park? And is it, because I couldn't see in the map, is it?
I think that'll kind of get developed as each area gets developed. Like
Okay.
we'll have to do something quite strategic around where they'll go in the park. But for
Yeah.
example, like there'll be some near the play space or whatever.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good.
But that's really good feedback actually. When you like that.
Right, well, thank you very much. Yeah, very exciting and yeah, look forward to more engagement and how it goes and yeah, it'd be great to connect with those groups that are using the park already.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your questions and your thoughts. All good.
Thank you.
Just one thing I thought about, I don't know how others feel, but you know, we had the presentation on the play space and strategy. It seems to me that having a bigger playground, you know, more destination type playground here would be good to consider, but I don't know what the process is like to have our feedback included.
I'm coming to council tomorrow to talk about the play space network plan.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, so there'll be an update then. But this one's a community, like the biggest scale community size playground, so it's got a reasonable budget,
Yeah,
but not a destination.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I think, can you discuss that offline?
Yeah, we can do that. But
All right, so, yeah, we're already well behind schedule, but that was, this has been coming for a long time and, yeah, naturally lots of questions. So the next is the Environment Canterbury here, they talk about public transport network review.
Yeah. Hello. So, thank you for your time today. I've been here before, honestly. Nice to see some of you again, actually. My name's Mark O'Leary. I'm a Principal Transport Planner at Environment Canterbury. And I have Charlotte Woodfield with me. And we also have with us Steph Sims, Senior Community Comms Advisor. So we're here today to talk about proposed changes to Route 44 and the proposed discontinuing of Route 135. So the last few times I've been here, it's support projects like Pages Road Bridge and QE2 infrastructure. So I feel like a bit of a meanie coming here today. So we're going to cancel the bus route, but no, we'll go through it and we'll be really keen to take your feedback on board as well and hopefully give you some consolation that there's a bigger programme. Actually, that's where I'm going to start. So, just ordered for the present. Cool. Thank you very much. So just a quick overview of how we'll spend our presentation time before we have a conversation. I'll just explain the purpose again of why we're here. Then I'll talk about the PT Futures programme, which you'll hopefully all have heard of. And then we'll talk about why we're focusing on routes 135 and 44, the opportunities there as well. Give you an idea of the impacts of that and the effort we've gone to understand those impacts. And hopefully put your minds at rest that they are very minimal. And then we will talk to future opportunities, and they are manifest. We have many opportunities. So if I start with the purpose, yeah, we are informing you today of our proposal to repurpose resources from Route 135 to address some operational issues with Route 44. And we're also here to talk about the broader PT Futures programme being developed and to welcome the participation in that process and all the conversations we hope to have with you in improving PT services in this community. So I'll start with the PT Futures programme. It is basically over the next 10 years, we potentially have over $1 billion that we'd spend on PT in Greater Otatohi. So it's a huge programme, and it's massively important because we are the fastest growing city in New Zealand. I think I've got 7,000 a year here, that's out of date. I think it was actually 7,600 last year. And we need to make growth successful and achieve our strategic vision for Greater Otatahi in terms of us being the best city region we can be, and that needs to be a city that can move, that can support the growth positively, and that we can move and develop in partnership with our natural resources as well. And that's what PT Futures is all about. It's about realising that strategic vision. There is a programme right now that we're developing with NZTA. So we've got Route 5 right here in New Brighton. We are currently putting a business case to NZTA for co-funding to upgrade back to 10-minute frequencies, like we did for Route 7. You may be familiar with the Route 7 Hallswell to Parkinson's. So we want to do that here as well. That's looking like a very strong case. But we also need to focus on short-term improvements on an ongoing basis. And the reason for that has really been accelerated in the last year or two. The policy environment we're working in is really restrictive. We're giving clear messages from the government that we need to make better use of the public transport resources we have today before they're going to give us more for improvements. It's fair to say we're a slightly lesser funded PT service than other cities, so it's not a massive amount of waste, to be honest, but that's the challenge we've been given. And this network review over the next 10 years, well, I'll come back to that at the end. We're going to talk about alternative service models and new ways of doing things, which can better serve this community. But in the meantime, we have a directive towards optimisation and making better use of the resources we have. And that leads me nicely to introduce Charlotte. You can talk about what's happening with the Route 135 and 44.
Cool. So I'd just like to explain why Route 44 and 135 are the first routes to be optimised. So as the header says, Route 44 is unreliable and Route 135 is underused, is the key message. So Route 44 is one of our highest performing routes. So every trip is highly utilised, meaning that the money we get from passenger fares significantly offsets its operational costs. At the same time, Route 44 has severe reliability issues. It's the least punctual route in our network, with 20% of its northbound journeys being over 10 minutes late.
So can you just tell us where the routes go to and from, just so we can just kind of get it in our mind as you talk?
So Route 44 goes from Westmoreland in the south, northwards through the city and the interchange up to the Palms and terminates in Darlington. Cool. Route 135 starts at the Palms, goes up to Preston's, around past Toyota Kiwi 2 and terminates in New Brighton. So it goes along Marine Parade. Cool. So Route 44, very well patronised, but has its reliability issues. Route 135 is in a different situation where it really doesn't have enough patronage to significantly offset its operational costs. So we can see that it's scoring third there in terms of, it's kind of been covered by the black bar there, but that graph is showing the taxpayer subsidy per passenger for everyone boarding each route. So Route 135 has a subsidy of over $15 per passenger. Compared to Route 44, we can see that it is on the other end just under $5.
Is that a typo?
Whereabouts?
Route 125?
So
Bottom of the big page.
what this one shows is, this is a comparison of complaints on Route 44 compared to similar routes of Route 60, which has a similar frequency, and Route 125, which has a similar number of boardings. So it's showing that there are 4 times more timeliness complaints per 100,000 boardings.
Totally. Good. So So Route 135 isn't working at the moment. And it's probably worth spending a minute to think about why it's not working. And think about what we can do. So over time, there's been lots of requests to change Route 135. I've got to admit, I've been part of that too, as part of the QE2 work. We got it diverted through that site. We've been changed and amended down the years, and it's got to the point now where it serves so much coverage that it's lost all its directness. So nobody wants to go around the houses basically, and it's well known in PT planning. I've got an example here from Jared Walker. He's an international PT expert. We value his work quite highly. And he compared two almost identical bus lines in different parts of the world in terms of population catchments. By coincidence, I've been on both of those. So the Melbourne line here, very circuitous, not so dissimilar from our 135, performs quite poorly compared to the more direct service, and that's just a real world example of something we'd like to do through the network review is to make some of our routes either more direct or perhaps replace them with an alternative service model, which I can talk to. So really that's why the patronage outcomes are quite low. It doesn't connect the right places at the moment, and it's not direct enough. So yeah, a less costly or better performing service model, as I say, will be investigated through the PT Futures programme.
So just a summary of what our proposal is. We're seeing a huge need to improve Route 44, the underutilisation of Route 135. We propose that the resource from 135 would have a greater impact to more people if used to extend Route 44 to Preston's and resolve its reliability issues. And that extension of Route 44 up to Preston's would follow that same path the 135 does and recover about a third of that route. So how is the community impacted by the removal of 135? So what we're seeing here are the red boxes, are the areas that of 135 that are no longer nearby a PT service once it's removed. So I haven't highlighted areas close to the 7, the 80 and the 60 that are also on the screen, or where the new 44 would go up to Preston's. Based on the customer data we have, the number of people in those boxes, they represent an average of 39 return trips per day. The area is well served by a school bus network, which will cater to all school trips previously served by 135. And Darlington, that red box in the bottom, that would no longer have service if the 44 is moved, that can be recaptured through another route in the network, like the Orbiter or the 100. All other boardings, other than those 39 return trips per day, are nearby another public transport service. So here's the overview of what we're proposing. So for the 44, the improvements, its benefits and the disbenefits. So the improvement will be solving reliability issues for all users of the 44. Moving the determinants to Preston's will increase the access to the CBD by 4,100 residents, but brand new access for 1.5 to 2,000 residents in South Preston's, as well as proposing extending its operating hours and weekend frequency. And this would be at the cost of about 14 return trips per day once the school trips and the Darlington trips are recaptured.
Brilliant. So moving forward, PT Futures. So this isn't something we want to do, but as you can see, there's an opportunity here to replace something that's not working. something that's gonna work better for our community. That being said, we still need to come back here through the P2 Futures programme and make improvements to public transport in this community. I mentioned earlier, we'd be looking at things like alternative service models that can make a better job of matching up that coverage issue, you know, covering everywhere and providing access. And we're hoping for your participation and more than that. You know, we want you to join our conversation, we want to listen and work to improve P2 with you in this area. And there's a link to our site there where you can get started and have a look. And the conversation doesn't end today. So we do have some ideas already that I can run by, and that would include potentially extending the Route 7 to Taiola, Route 2, that sort of thing. We'd support the new Brighton master plan and see that our new turn up and go Route 5 is fully integrated with that land use development. And we've been working with Christchurch NZ on that exciting project. We have changes to make to the orbiter as well that would offset some of the loss at Darlington, for example, and support the Kerrs Reach Rowing Club. And as I alluded to, the alternative service delivery model might be a better way of serving that particular community. What we need to do is deliver the strongest possible metro system. So that's why we have to make that's why we have to recommend difficult decisions sometimes. I think that's probably where we can take questions.
Yeah, I have a speaking order. So we have, and I'm going to ask a question first. Celeste, so the speaking order after me will be Celeste, Kim, Alex, Jackie, Kelly, Yanni, and that's all supposed to happen within 3 minutes. No, I don't think it is. But again, not often we have ECAN with us, so we will try to be efficient. But so I just noticed that you haven't mentioned Aranui, and it's clearly that there was a commitment made by your councillors to try to put in a route through Aranui. So, and I think that everybody here would be supportive of there being a route through Aranui, because there is a lot of demand. Well, yeah, but other routes were mentioned. Yeah, so just to put that out there, if you wanted to comment on that, or if you're able to comment on that, that would be helpful. Other question I had though is also about 155. I see it's the most inefficient of the routes. That was put through when a more frequent route was put, because you'll be familiar, it's 3 times a day off peak at a time when most people aren't using the bus. So it was, and when the formal route was disestablished, we said, look, that's not when you need to have that bus during peak times, otherwise it's not going to get much higher patronage. So it does seem like it's been mostly a waste of money, but not for the people who use it, obviously. So I would like to know if you have any ideas about improving that route, which does go through. But Alex, I do have you as.
No, I just guess I want to raise not necessarily a point of order, but I'm just a bit worried if we're running out of time and questions might be limited. Maybe discussing things outside the scope of the routes that have been discussed.
So you know that I'm the chairperson, right?
Yeah, I got it. It's not right there.
Okay. Anyway, yes, but as I said, that we don't have ECAN with us very often. Right. So if you have anything to add to that,
I answer. Yeah, we've been given a directive that we need to do more for Ireland. We are responding to, and we agree with fully. Yeah, I haven't got more detail to talk about today, but it sounds like you would like us to come and talk to you about that. So I could offer to do so.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
And the same with 155. And again, we have a network review opportunity that will look at all of these routes and areas. And we know very well that our resource isn't going far enough. It's a constant source of concern for us. And our directives from government are increasingly based on financial performance metrics, which, as we all know, it's not really what public transport is all about. So we need to be super smart in our network review over the coming 10 years. And as I say, I'd be happy to come back and talk about these other areas if that would be appreciated.
Yeah, it would be, thank you. All right, Celeste.
Thank you. In regards to, if you go back to, I don't know if we can go back to the one which showed the gaps in the network. So the one on Long Marine Parade, is there a sort of, because there's a lot of high density housing going in along Marine Parade, so I don't know when the assessment was done in terms of the potential number of people that might use that route, because I imagine that'll be changing quite rapidly. Is there sort of a plan to address that particular gap? Because North Brighton has come up a few times in terms of parts of it not being well serviced.
Yes, we can. There's one route that's not shown on the map, actually, it's Route 5, which would serve a lot of the trade area.
Is that along that route?
It doesn't at the moment, but as I say, through the network, it's, I don't want to make promises or raise expectations unnecessarily, but I think Marine Parade is, and the area around it's quite a core destination. And improving access to these destinations is a desired outcome of this project. So that's feedback we could take away and make sure is represented in the bit moving forward.
Yeah, it'd just be good to understand if we're looking at addressing the gaps, how that'll look and whether potential overlaps might be in terms of addressing those, and what the optimal, I understand you've got to work with constraints by many factors within government funding, but say walking distance to a bus stop, what is the optimal walking distance? Because I can't see, since you can't really see street names, but if you remove that service, is the optimal walking distance within service level provisions or optimal provisions? It's just good. Maybe you could provide a written response to some of the questions because we don't have much time. And I'll just mention a couple more to come back with if we see you again, would be around the PT Futures work. My understanding is that Route 5, the government's deferred funding for an uplift, so that business cases, so I thought the business case had already been developed. It'd be good to get a bit more information about whether ECAN has the option of progressing that ahead of government funding. Is it looking to do with the Aramoi?
That's what we're doing with Route 5.
Okay, great.
So.
That would be great. And the final one for me to pick up, maybe not now, would be as part of the PT Futures, the master planning. We have engaged with ECAN around the super stop or the bus layover, which we're looking at designing as part of the regeneration stuff. I think that really needs to be sped up, the timeline for kind of those conversations. Things that have been parked. So it'd be good to understand that maybe as part of the next engagement we have. But yeah, I probably don't have time for anything too much more. I'll pass it on to the next person. But
okay, thank you. We look forward to seeing you again and we'll come and talk to those points.
that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Then Ellen.
Thanks for coming as well. It's good to see you here. I was encouraged to read in the newspaper this morning. ECAN, there was an article there, you read that. So it's mostly, for those that haven't read it, was in part of the body of that article, it talked about the public transport network needs both, which was the high performing routes, but also the social routes. And so then it was the gentleman that Stuart Gibbon, who spoke in the article, was just saying these are really important because we need the both. And if we sort of, a whole lot of people get disadvantaged because we're not looking at the social routes as well, and maybe 135 is one of those. But it was really good to say that ECAN have got that social lens, and so for us on the east side of Christchurch, it's really important that that lens is really front and centre. And as Celeste mentioned, the development that is happening in this area, both in North Beach, right through the South Shore, is huge. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of houses. Developments either been in a building now or proposed. So it's really important we get these connections sorted, because some areas are really feeling quite neglected. Which is good as this, that Preston's needs the upgrade, needs that improvement. We don't want to be seeing our residents disadvantaged because of it. So I would encourage that if decisions are made, that's through this sort of stopped until a new proposal is put forward. And better routes and connections is really welcomed if we can improve things. But to, like for South Shore, for example, and South Brighton, it's we're not sure if we're having them every hour, or it's just not a good system, and it's not going to encourage people to use them. The same in North Beach, we don't even have a bus on a Sunday. And you know, the surf clubs, the events that we have in this part of town, all of those things need to sort of go into the melting pot. So it's not, that's residents, but it's also events. And to encourage our kids to get to the beach, etc. Golf clubs, etc. I do have a couple of things, if you don't mind, just questions from some communities. So it says, with all the rebuilding going on around Brighton and North Beach, does Ekin plan on having any bus service that goes from Brighton to North Beach and past the hospital to the Palms? So they're quite major connections for the other town.
Indeed.
I mean, as Silly said, you want to be answering some of these questions in a time.
May I, if it please the chair, I could provide a quick answer. Thank you. Stuart Gibbon is our general manager, so I will pass your compliments on to him. In terms of, and we do agree, we are very much in favour of wanting to provide more of those services for the good of people. So we are definitely on the same page, and we're going to find new ways of doing that through this programme review, and we've brought on the best. We brought on the best consultants we could bring in to help us figure out how to do that. So we're also gearing the project up largely to serve new development areas as well. So all of the fantastic development that's happening here, which is looking brilliant, that will be something that we will need to serve with a good public transport, not just like key development areas will be needing more sort of core high frequency BT routes. So that's something we'll look to deliver, and we'll take I'll take your feedback around. It sounds like a new Brighton to Burwood Hospital, a bit like 135, but potentially a better version of that. And we'll certainly take that away with us and see what we can do as part of the network review.
And more regular. Also, sorry, just the residents' questions. There was talk.
How many residents' questions do you have?
Oh, I just bring on. There was talk of number 80 going to the North Beach to New Brighton to connect with the number 5 to the city. Is this still going to happen? Is that something that's going to be as part of the review?
It will be part of the review.
And it says, when will the commuter bus service to North Beach be restored? Is Ekin aware that the North New Brighton residents have informed CCC that they want a bus stop? And it has 135 bus services for residents, but it's just about this resident particularly keen on the bus system in North Beach and getting that there, and I'm sure you're very aware of that person. Doing a great job there lobbying for the community. So yeah.
That's wonderful. And we'll have to have an expanded conversation because I'm sure you've got so much community feedback that we would love to help you make sense of and actually convert into something meaningful.
I think just part of the politics, but maybe more for this year. When it comes to coming back to the community board, to give us a bit of an update or share things, maybe we can involve some of those residents in particular interest they might like to.
I think that's worth considering. It would depend on whether we're resourced to do a good job of that, because that might be another step. That's what we're talking about. Yeah. It'd be great to
introduce our senior comms advisor who can do this.
Kia ora, hi. I just want to give you an update because with regards to Aranui and the bus service in Aranui, you're right, that was endorsed by council. So there is actually an engagement going out today, and I will make sure that the team has the link for that.
Just been sent to us.
Oh, very good, very good. And the other thing is that we are looking for everybody's input through the community, and what we're really hoping for is for your support to pass that review link on to people, because we have a survey that will be going out to everybody. And part of that survey is the broader network review, but it's also specifically got questions on the Route 44 and 135 proposals. So hopefully that will go out really far and wide. We've got some plans to get that far and wide out into the community, but we're really hoping that through that formal review process, that's what our council will be looking at in order to make their decision. So really encourage everybody to share that link and ask residents to return that information back to us through the survey.
Just what we've got.
You're next, though.
But what we've got to keep.
Okay. Alex has got a follow-on for
On that, sorry, while we're here, you said it's going far and wide, wouldn't that kind of detrimentally impact the results for people that are in the areas that we're talking about who use those routes? If the
No.
survey's going to other sides.
No. We've got a mechanism to understand who is using the route and who's impacted by it, but.
Okay, thank you, that was good.
Yep, all right, come in.
Thank you.
Good, all right. Alex.
Obviously in Timaru, you do kind of my way. And you used to have the small buses run by Red Bus going down 135. As part of the review in PT Futures, looking at whether or not you could sort of have a My Way service for those of you who aren't here and don't understand what My Way is effectively. Well, maybe these guys explain a little bit more, but it's kind of more of an on-demand rideshare service, is my understanding. Is there any appetite to look into that in these routes where we don't have a main bus route, but may have enough to serve a My Way?
Yes, so I mentioned the alternative service models, but I deliberately didn't use the word My Way because we could look at variants on My Way. So My Way in Timaru connects people from origin to destination. It's effectively an Uber, but not quite as good. I think that's probably the best way to put it. Also quite expensive to run. But we know, we've learned lessons from our colleagues in Auckland Transport, we're looking at alternatives that might look a little bit like that, but might, for example, connect you to a core route, high frequency or something like that. Yeah, that sort of thing. So look, we're happy to look outside the box as part of this review, and see if we can come up with the right fit for this community.
Next question, happy to have it in response to our email, but you kind of highlighted that I think it was 33 people hop on 135 a day. And it is serviced by other routes, or roughly. I guess my point is that those other routes don't necessarily connect to where they wanted to go. So if they're going on 135, they wanted to go to New Brighton, catching the 6 Palms, and then catching another bus that New Brighton probably isn't necessarily the most resourceful. But that's fine. I'll cut that for now. I guess my last question in relation specifically to the 44 extension. I've had a number of residents in Spencerville reach out about a new route. They were going to get in touch about extending or changing one of their current routes. Has there been any thought into extending that 44 that goes to Preston's 5 minutes up the road to Preston, to Spencerville as well? Or would the way to do that be through that link you've provided in terms of passing feedback on about that? But about 30, I know Facebook is not a statistical great place for that, but 30 comments, that sort of saying that take the bus as well.
So that's the sort of thing we'll look at through the network review, and if we want to go on to serve places further out.
But not yet, that isn't.
And again, definitely the survey is the place to do that. That's essentially the place that we will be collating all the information from community. I've seen that too.
Brilliant, thank you.
All right, Jackie, and then Kelly, and then Jan.
Thank you. In 2016, you cut the 135. You cut the hours of the 135 and changed it around and made it extremely inconvenient for the people who had been using it, thus reducing the numbers of people using it. Then extended it to take it somewhere where they didn't want to go, thus further inconveniencing the people who had been using the original 135 route before you cut it. So it stands to reason that people are not going to use this route because you've cut the frequency on it and you've made it inconvenient. So of course people aren't going to use it and your numbers will drop. The number 155 was used, it went to Bromley and it was utilised by people going to work and coming home from work and going to school. And in 2016, you cut that service and extended it up the hill in Westmoreland. So you cut the service and made it pretty much useless to anyone who was living in Bromley and Wilson who was using that to go to work or come home, and extended it at the other end so that private school children could get a convenient bus up the hill and not have to walk. How does that
fit into providing a bus service that is needed for the poorer people in our community. If you make it so inconvenient, you can't use it and the numbers drop and you go, oh, no one's using it, you can just cut it. It's a bit like, oh, well, if you're not happy with our public health system, we'll just make it so shitty that we have to turn it off and make it all private. Because I understand that it's in your brief that you have to supply public transport to low socioeconomic areas, to people who can't afford cars or don't have cars, but you're taking it away from people who absolutely need it and going, oh, but they can go and get this bus that takes them where they don't want to go. A bus that goes from Darlington to Eastgate or into the city doesn't help someone who was able to catch that bus to Brighton. So I just want to raise that if you make the bus services so damned inconvenient that people don't want to use them, then your numbers will go down and you will be able to keep cutting them. That's it for me. Thanks.
Was there a question?
My question was when they're going to actually look at the cutting the bus services to the people who actually need them. Are we looking at that? Have you thought about the people who don't actually want to go to the city? Let's look at the 155. How many people would catch that bus to work at Eastgate, to work in the city if it's still ran? I understand that the government's given you a directive, but it does seem like you've improved the bus service to Preston's and Westmoreland while cutting it from a low socioeconomic area. I just don't understand that logic. I understand the dollar figure, but I don't understand the logic of not making it available to people who don't have cars, but increasing availability to those who do.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So over time, the route has evolved. We've changed it. What it's come to is something that nobody wants to use because it's not effective anymore. So I agree. And yes, we've got to a point where the easy, low-hanging fruit for us is to service people to the central city because from a financial perspective, that is where we're going to make most of the returns. But we really, really don't want to develop a network that is only doing that. And our directive, as you say, is not to do so. We are legally bound with the Land Transport Management Act, and we want to, we as a team, we do our jobs to help people. So we've got to a point where we need to start from scratch almost. This is why we're doing a really massive network review and to try and get around the challenges of these stringent financial targets that have been placed on us. But we know that there are ways in which we can provide services to everyone, including this community, and we're going to figure out how best to do that.
I think one of the things that's really important to note as well is that we understand that the network hasn't kept pace with development. We've got maps that have shown service areas that are really not meeting people's needs at the moment. And we recently did a look at 3 years worth of comments from people all the way across Greater Otautahi. And we got feedback from people from 128 different towns and suburbs. And I can assure you that every single town would like higher frequency. So we've got a really, really high competition from everybody would like to see their services improved. So it's that tension between, having really limited resources and having everybody being really keen to have the services improved everywhere.
Thank you. Kelly and then Yanni.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I think you guys got an enviable job, and I think you do a great job with the resources that you've given. I love the idea of the 135 job kind of just off the route. I hardly ever see the buses. And I think your solution with the 44 is actually pretty good. 10 years ago, no one lived up the top end of Preston's Park, one area around there. Now there's like 4,000 homes. A lot of people expressed to me that they want to take the bus, but they're not happy with where the bus is going. So I think that's a really good solution. And I'm sure we'll work it out. Not sure about the little loop that goes towards Innes Road and then comes back down to sort of the Palms and then goes north. That would drive me nuts if I was on the bus, but, you know, you feel like you're going around a little circle, but I understand, you know, you need to service things like that. So, yeah, positive feedback. My question is, how likely or when is this going to happen? Should it be approved and go through the process?
So this will be done through the LTP process, so we'll be looking to go public consultation early 27 quarter. As part of this, yeah, so would you look into?
And then if it's approved and when's it likely to be in place?
I couldn't say at this point, that's very tricky. But things like what you just mentioned with the current shape of the 44, for example, these are changes that we can make in the near term. So there are still other near-term changes we can make that are not going to rely on improvements and extra funding. But I couldn't give a time frame now as to what was going to happen.
Did you mean for this proposal though?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Oh, yeah. The council will make a decision later this year.
So it might be in place early next year.
I think it depends on some
I'm not in the
operating.
quote yet, but I just want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just some operational timeframes around unions and you know, changing of routes with drivers, etc., that needs to be observed.
Sure.
So it's really hopefully.
Thank you.
Right, and Yanni?
Thank you. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of accept that you're not really here today to talk about the wider network review and some specific changes is what you're telling us. I just want to echo the concern around Marine Parade and the North New Brighton. That to me just seems like a massive gap, that whole Uplands kind of area. So interested to see what you can look at there. I guess I just want to impress upon you, similar to my colleague, Jackie, we stood at Eastgate getting signatures on a petition from people in our community who had no idea that you were cutting their bus services that they relied on as a basic need. And so there was a lot of upset, loss of confidence, loss of trust in ECAN for the way in which those decisions were made. The other parts of the city that are, you know, were able to engage a lot more, and for whatever reason. But I just think in some communities you need to look at engaging differently. You need to look at engaging face to face. You need to go to Eastgate Mall, stand there for a couple of hours like Jackie and I did, gather feedback from people, talk through, explain what you're doing. A lot of stuff like online or, you know, and councillors guilty of this as well, so I'm not getting at you, but there just needs to be a different way of engaging, which is not as short and sharp, and recognising that there's different ways to engage in different parts of the city. And also actually a lot of people value face-to-face interaction, and, you know, there's a lot of people that in our area that is quite diverse as well. So there's different languages. So look forward to the full network review. Just wanted to give you that feedback because I think both Jackie and I have all raised the same thing. We're really upset about the loss of those bus services and we want to work with you to try and restore.
I would like to speak to that just briefly because we recognise that talking to people in the community, I know everybody's not digitally connected. So our engagement this time around is 6 weeks long, and it's 6 weeks, which is quite unusual. It's specifically so that we can do that level of face-to-face engagement. So we have a plan to go out to the different malls. We've sectioned the city off into different areas so that we make sure that we go into each different area in different ways. We have a group of ambassadors who will be sending out to do face-to-face engagement specifically. So we're really happy to have a chat to you about that a bit more. We're really happy to support you in those conversations. I'll be out face-to-face. Lots of our staff will be out doing that as well. And Eastgate is definitely a space we will go to, and we talk to some of the people who provide services in that area as well. So, yeah.
And I guess the other just final piece of feedback from me is that some of these bus companies don't have very good forms of social responsibility. And so the thing in Bromley which really hurt people was at the same time that you cut their bus services, you put a bus depot in there that sped through the streets in the early morning, whacking people up. People had sleepless nights because of the result of the behaviour of the bus companies at the same time as they got their buses cut. So you can understand why people were pretty upset about about that. So I just, yeah, again, just please think about the services when you're doing your contracts around the social responsibility, community responsibility that these companies should have, these local communities as well.
Well, yeah, thank you. Really appreciate you coming in. Sorry, we fired a bunch of stuff at you, but appreciate you. You didn't make the decisions at the previous changes, and that's really appreciate you coming to the board, and we'll look forward to that later conversation.
Thank you. We look forward to coming back.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you
very much.
Thanks a lot.
All right, we're running very behind schedule, but I think we've got, wait, so we have a 2-minute adjournment, and just so that we can grab a drink of water and stuff, but I mean that by 2 minutes, I'm gonna be banging the gavel.
2 minutes.
Hello.
Hello, hello. We are back for the future of South Riding Community Hall with Matt and Sam.
Kia ora. Thanks for this opportunity. Today we're going to do a presentation and then take questions about the South Riding Community Hall. We look at some of the options that are possible and some that are not. Primarily what we're doing though is, obviously this is not a decision meeting, this is just about getting your feedback to help us shape the next step of the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, thumbs up. So, sorry. Okay, so what we're looking at then is audibly coming back with a formal report. Once we get your feedback and move through the different stages, depending what the recommended approach will be, that may end with a report to you, or it may end with a report to council. So first of all, what we'll do is we'll talk about the site. Sam will then talk about some of the.
Sorry, don't have to stop talking. I might be.
Feedback from the community, and we'll talk through some of the options. So when we're talking about the South New Brighton Community Centre or Community Hall, it's the building at 74 Betty Street on the park. It sits in an area where there are approximately 10 sites within a couple of kilometres and 4 or 5 within the South New Brighton area. So that's the context of our site. But the building that's in the park at the moment, it replaces an original facility that was lost in the earthquake 2011. The building itself that's there now was a relocatable building that came from the QE2 site. It was put there as a temporary measure. It was earthquake. The permit that was given to it to be there ran out in 2016 and hasn't been updated since. So what was an interim solution has turned out to be a long-term solution. Now, a good question to ask then at this point is why are we in this situation? Why wasn't another structure put in permanently? And of course, there were many conflicting priorities across the city, focusing on a number of buildings to replace ones damaged or lost in the earthquake. This one was a lower prioritisation relative to the other capital projects that were around. And at no point then was there money set aside as a priority to restore the original building. So the current situation we're in then is we've got a building that's not consented. The current building, if you're not familiar with it, needs a lot of work to bring it up to a really good standard. The most recent estimate is around $160,000, plus the consenting costs to get there. This is on top of an annual cost of around $18,000 just to keep it going. At the moment, if we don't do anything, we're facing a number of issues around the state of the building, in this area. There's rot on the windows, and the feedback that we've had from many customer groups are of a declining user experience. So I'll hand over to Sam now, who's going to talk about some engagement she's had with the local groups that have been using it in the community.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so Jackie and I have been having conversations with people in the community. It's been part of, we've done there's 4 regular hirers. And then the rest are ad hoc users. So all of the information so far has come from one-on-one conversations with the regular hirers, local facility operators, and some other key organisations in the area. So this is just a quick snapshot of who's using the hall. Primarily small group usage, 270 bookings per year. Most of that is made up by the regular hirers. Some of the trends that we're seeing are declining usage in hours and declining revenue as well. So who uses it? As mentioned, I've spoken with all of the regular hirers so far, either on the phone or in person. Speaking with them, we've chatted about their current experience, what works well, and what doesn't work well about the hall, and they're looking at their needs and then looking into the future as well. The information we have for the one-off users at this stage is based on their bookings. We haven't had conversations with them yet, but sending out a survey is possibly we could do to talk to them. So what we know is that most of the groups are hyper-local. They live within South Brighton and the surrounding areas. Most of them are delivering community-based classes. Sorry, I'm really puffed, guys. It's hard to speak at the moment. Most of the regular hires are older adults groups, so 2 out of the 4 regular hires are older adults based, and they're small not-for-profit organisations. The one-off users are kind of broken down by cultural and community events, private celebrations, social events, religious, faith-based gatherings, and then a few other random ones in there. So, next one.
out of the 4 regular hirers, the things that they told us that worked really well were it's local and easy to access. So it's close to public transport, easy for access for groups. There's actually storage inside the building, which the regular hirers can use, and it's lockable, which is particularly helpful for those older adults groups as they don't have to lug equipment around. It's affordable. Most of the groups are small koha-based groups, so having a hall that's affordable is really important. Groups noted that it was the perfect size for the smaller base groups that are in there. It feels homely, the green space is appreciated, and also noted that the kitchen meets the needs of the groups using it. And then one of the biggest things that has come out of it is that the parking is kind of the key thing that the groups love about this facility. And again, on the other hand, there's a few kind of issues which Matt briefly mentioned, cleanliness and odour. So one thing that kept coming up was the state of the carpets, which is mainly concerning for groups that are sitting on the floors. And then sometimes bad smells as well, particularly on Mondays when the facility's been closed for a while. And then just a general declining condition. So the groups feel that the building has gone downhill over the years, feels a bit tired, and windows are one of the bigger issues. They don't really open and close properly, which probably doesn't help with the smell. The key kind of things that we know work well, or the value of the space, is the location and the affordability. So next one. So the next part of this was looking at the wider facility network. So we did a bit of a mapping exercise of local facilities within the different kind of radiuses. So we've spoken with most of the facilities on this map, either one-on-one, in person, or on the phone. There's a couple that we haven't had a chance to speak with yet, but we were able to find information online. When we spoke with the facilities in the area, we asked them a number of questions to better understand their facility. So how it's being used by the community, how it fits within the wider community network, and just ask general questions around their facility, availability and usage, pricing, challenges and opportunities, and future of their space. So if you look at the map, the yellow is like a 1 kilometre radius, the blue is 2 to 3 kilometres, purple is 3 to 4, and then those red ones are 4 kilometres plus, but it's kind of helpful in looking at that wider network. So yeah, for the purposes of this exercise, we went as far as 4 kilometres to highlight the network, but when assessing the current users of the hall and spaces that would be available to them, the focus would be within that 1 kilometre radius that are pretty close. I do have a list of like key findings if you want me to roll through those. All right, so it's worth noting that while there's quite a large network of facilities within a close distance, they all offer a range of spaces that suit varying needs within the community. There are a number of mixed spaces with varying capacity, main halls, large function spaces, medium spaces, and smaller meeting rooms. Most facilities seem to be quite flexible and used for community events, private functions, workshops and classes. Kitchen facilities are common but vary in what they have available. Overall, most facilities are fully accessible, but some have few limitations. Equipment and amenities seem to be similar: chairs, tables, heating, Wi-Fi, all that stuff. Does vary a little bit. A common trend across facilities is availability during the day. So lots of them have that school time, and typically most of them are quite busy in the afternoon, evening and weekends, which is quite a common trend we see everywhere. A number of facilities aren't open for public use. However, almost all of them would be open to discussions depending on the group and their needs. And pricing does vary from facility to facility, with almost all of them offering rates for not-for-profit groups. Cool. All right. And network, well, I've kind of talked about that and what they kind of offer. There's a huge variety of facilities across this area. Some are newer, some are a little bit older, but generally most of them are a bit newer, and then there is capacity to accommodate a number of different activities. So looking at the groups that are based in the South New Brighton Hall, I do believe that they could be place somewhere else, but we would need to have conversations with them first. A lot of work would need to be done to kind of look into that. Yes. Was a smile? I can't remember.
I took it as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so South Brighton then is a little bit different from other facilities we have. I'd like to say that it's in terms of it and putting it in context. All of our facilities across the city, the average use rate works out to be around 26%. South Brighton as an individual site is on the lower end of usage. So in the last financial year, it was only utilised for around 8% of the time. So it's clearly meeting a need in the local area in terms of low cost, easy to access facility. And it has that, as Sam talked about too, it has that use by older adults, lower income groups, and occasionally, and only 19 times in the last year, by other groups for informal activities. Most of the usage is with those four core groups at the moment. So where does that leave us in terms of our discussion today? Well, we've got a building that's not legally compliant. If we were to retain the use of it, it's going to require a significant capital investment to fix it up. No funding is currently available that is set aside for this. It appears that the wider network could meet the demand. So if we got to a position where South Brighton Community Hall didn't exist, there is sufficient capacity in the rest of the network to pick that up, it appears. If it was to go, there would be some local impact for the reasons we've alluded to. In terms of levels of service that the council needs to meet, this building doesn't have to be retained to meet our level of service around having at least 84 facilities in the community across the city. What is key though is that a do nothing option is not one that we can pursue long term. So what we're trying to balance here then are the issues that we've alluded to. One is making sure there is local access for the people within South New Brighton. We're balancing that against the costs and funding constraints that we have currently. We've got the issues to do with the condition and the compliance of the building as it is, and the efficiency of our network overall. So to summarise it, there is no perfect solution or easy solution in this situation. So we'll just spend a minute or two going through some of the key issues in a bit more detail. So we've already talked a little bit about the building. Again, something has to be done because it's not legally compliant. Some sort of investment would need to be done to keep it going. It was always intended as a temporary structure, and there was no drive from the council to look at a permanent replacement for the building that was lost in the earthquake. So it's not really a viable long-term asset in its current form for the community or the council. Thank you. I'll apologise, I'm a terrible multitasker, so I appreciate the prompt. From a funding point of view, so in the budget that I'm responsible for, there is money set aside to manage the maintenance of buildings. There is not set aside money for this particular building to do the work that's required to it, nor is there anything in the long-term plan around a replacement. So the other issue we looked at that's related here is what would happen if the building was to go. As Sam said, there is a good opportunity to move them around the network that is local. The flip side to that would be potentially impacts in cost and travel time for those groups, potentially a reduction in participation, but the impacts are going to be uneven, whatever we do. So one thing we could do is look at a long-term solution which would involve a new build. That would involve taking away or demolishing the building that exists there now, designing a new one, making sure that it's fully compliant. That would involve a significant amount of money. A good example recently is the Shilly Community Centre that's going to be delivered early next year, or by early next year. So the original budget for that, the design for it was close to $2 million, and the one the board signed off was over $3 million. So we would expect something in that sort of ballpark to match. But the thing was that it would need to get on the long-term plan. At the same time, we say that, of course, there are other conflicting priorities across the network. And so it's not a simple ask for some more money. We need to weigh up as to where the demand is. But in terms of our discussion today, as of now, there's no new funding planned or ready to be used. The next consideration is around where it sits within the network. As we've said, current usage is relatively low. There's quite a few facilities in the vicinity. We'd have to therefore weigh up the need for the facility against the investment and work that would be required to deliver it. So, as an option, building something new is not a feasible short to medium term plan. It would require something to go into the long-term plan and then be planned out for a few years in the future. So what we've come up here with in terms of our main discussion are three other options that we could go with. Option one is a short-term fix, so really like putting a sticking plaster on a cut. That's throwing a little bit of money at the building, trying to get rid of some of the immediate issues with it, such as the carpet, with the plan that we were going to retain it longer term. Or we could spend all the money that we budget, or that hasn't been budgeted, but that has been determined to do the full fix, which is the $160,000. Or the third option is that we close the building and relocate the users to other venues. With the first option, the minimal investment one, so basically the building would continue to operate. We'd address the immediate problems, retain the local access to the building, but it wouldn't give us a long-term fix. It would mean that at some point in the future, we're either going to spend a whole lot more money or look to the long-term plan as a future solution for it. The full upgrade option, again, this is the full repair and revitalisation of the building. Benefits there, of course, would be the facility would stay, look better, be better, and solve the problems that are currently being incurred. The limitations there is the cost. So again, no budget. So the money would have to come from something else to replace it. It would still be left with a temporary building. And so we'd still have the issue of dedicated funding as of yet. And then the third option is to remove the building in one way or another, either demolition or movement. Advantage there, of course, is there's no capital investment required. We believe the network can accommodate the use that's in the community, but of course it would mean the loss of the building and some impact on some of the local groups. If we were to go down the path of the last option, and the facility was to close or change, then we would be working very closely with the community to do a managed transition, working with the hirers, understanding their needs and trying to find the best fit for them within the local community. And really the key message from that is that the managed transition would be critical and we'd have to spend time to be successful. So that's the quick rundown of where we are and why we've come to you today. What we're looking for your feedback on are the 4 questions on the screen there. Just before we get to those though, one last comment. So we're looking to get your feedback today. If the direction we get from you is to get more analysis or more feedback, follow it up, and then that will lead to coming back for a formal decision on the site in due course. So if we could ask you to think about those 4 questions and then provide us with where you think we should go.
Thank you very much. We have questions already in speaking order. So we've got Celeste, Kim, Alex, and then me. Celeste?
So just in terms of direction, I'd be interested in just getting a bit more community feedback, because I understand you've spoken to the users, but it would be interesting to hear from the wider, part of the community. I think that's quite an important part of the process, is if we were to make a decision without being seen to seek community input, that would probably not be received well. In terms of with the information that comes back, it would be really helpful to look at like what is currently in the area, but also what the charges are for community groups, because I understand in some respects, we're quite well served with community facilities as compared to many parts of the city, but at the same time, some of those facilities do have user charges that are maybe out of reach of some groups, and would be quite an important consideration for us. If yes, we've got a lot of community organisations that can afford to pay for a usage of a hall, but if these groups in particular aren't accessing those other facilities, I wonder what the reason is, and it might be the parking and the access. So that would then determine some of what we might want to do. And the final question for me is, you talked about, I guess, demolition of the building is one option, but have we looked at, would it be feasible to relocate the building itself? Is it in a sufficiently sturdy condition that would be a viable option if we maybe get some budget? Because obviously there'd be a budget to demolish it, which is usually not that cheap either. I'm just giving you an example, but I'm sure there's plenty of communities that would welcome the building, but that was suitable. But I'm thinking places like Paenga, they have a community hall that's about 100 years old and it's still resting on tin cans. So once that building is demolished, they'll have nothing in that area. So is it a feasible option for us to put some money in the budget to move it and then do if the community were happy for it to go, be relocated to another community that's unserved?
We'll need to look at the what structural problems there are with the building. I can't answer that today, but
yeah, that'd be good. Thank you.
All right, Kim.
I agree with what Celeste just said. That would be really good to have that information there. Also, I just want to know what the users' first reaction to potentially losing them.
Well, when I went and met with them, I kind of said to them, hey, I'm just chatting to you, looking at all of the options and wanting to hear what your feedback is. The groups obviously would be disappointed because they love the space. They love the space for a number of different reasons. And so, yeah, they would be disappointed. Some of them were understanding, and then, yeah, it would be a really tricky decision because we would be letting people down, but it's such quite a small group of them. But yeah. Yeah,
I think history is important here too, as it was, as you said, temporary. And the community that were here through the earthquakes would be fully aware of that. It's just perhaps those that have come further down the track that aren't so much. The other question was, has any of the other user groups suggested to sort of take it on? Perhaps release it?
No one's brought that up here.
Said, oh yeah,
no,
we'll sort this. Okay,
yeah, they're all really small,
yeah,
super small, not-for-profit groups that are just informal groups.
no, that's good. I think my next question was what Celeste said. Could somebody else be shifted? So Celeste has covered that one. That's great. If the users were to relocate, had any of them perhaps considered, well, okay, we can appreciate that because there are another seven options in their 1 K radius. So perhaps if they actually gently that conversation. Perhaps
yeah, definitely. There was like reasons why groups haven't gone to other places. Like for example, the Bridge Hub, which is obviously quite nice and new down the road, but the parking is not good there, particularly for older adults. But some of the groups did mention that there were other places that they've looked at, but it hadn't worked out for whatever reason. There could be conversations that could be had with those local providers to try and support them moving into a different space. Yeah,
that's great.
Right, thanks, Alex.
I guess my perspective on the first 2 points about potentially using it, moving it elsewhere, I'm a little bit baffled by that, to be honest, because my understanding is the reason why we're discussing it is because it's going to cost money to repair. And if we're moving it elsewhere with less use, it's still going to cost money to repair. So it just seems like we're moving it. It just seems to debate the point. So I'm a bit baffled by that. But hey, did you say there's a budget for repairs or there's no budget currently?
So in the community facilities portfolio, there's a budget that looks after all the 26 buildings in the portfolio. So there is part of that set aside for reactive and part of it for planned maintenance. So each year it's a matter of juggling that budget in terms of things that happen. As an example, we've got water tightness issues in the North New Brighton Community Centre that's being fixed. So that was an unexpected surprise. Got another one in another building where that's the same sort of thing. So there's money that's set aside to cover the whole network and to make allowances for surprises and planned work, but nothing specifically for this site.
Okay, so I guess 2 points there. I think first of all, if we were looking at, I guess, removing it or decommissioning whatever permit uses, potentially whether or not there'd be any funding as part of those budgets to potentially help subsidise the use of another space while they, we're talking about user fees, I don't know, then double the price, potentially supporting them with those fees just whilst they come up with a model that would benefit for them in terms of charging members that use these services. And then my other point again, I just don't understand why we'd move it, because if we're going to have to spend the cost either way, why not keep it there? If we're moving it to an area that has less use, we're still going to spend the money upkeeping it. So that's my perspective.
To answer the funding question, we do have like the community board's discretionary fund as well that groups can apply to. And I guess when looking at supporting groups, if that's the option you want to go with, supporting them to go into another facility, we would be looking at trying to find something that would be the same cost and as similar as we can. Yeah, for sure.
For the other question, so we've got a couple of buildings in the network which are being gifted to community groups. Now, part of what they've taken on is the restoration themselves. So in a scenario like that, we wouldn't be fixing it and then shifting it. Would be if a group had a need for it, it would be the question about who pays for the movement. But the council
and they'd be responsible for any upkeep or up to that.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's good.
Probably another question. The first one is just probably the option one doesn't seem like an option at the moment, given the key theme has been that people think it's not legally compliant. So out of the option 2 and 3, if they were to receive an upgrade and retain, that's quite a high price. And is it common for like prices in higher to go up for these facilities?
So all of our fees are set by the council annually. So the fees that are charged at the Southern New Brighton Community Hall are the same for the size of the room to anywhere else in the city. So we don't set fees by the site; it's the whole thing.
So if they got the upgrade, but you still have the same price.
Yeah.
And I guess just reiterating feedback from current users about the possibility of alternative venues, and then seeing if that matches up with their timetables as well, if there's such regular users.
All right, apologies, Kelly, we're running quite behind schedule. So
I'll just make a comment if that's all right.
Well, okay.
Just to give it a steer, considering it's so underutilised, it's not compliant. It's going to cost a significant amount of money to actually restore it. It's costing us 18k a year to run it. Well, I think we should have it. Of course, there's plenty of provision around the area for those groups. I think it would be madness to keep it, madness to shift it unless somebody else, an organised group wanted to do it, given there's so much provision.
Yeah, I support that if it wasn't clear.
Yeah, and I agree with what Kelly said. Right, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, the next item number 5 is local cycle network east and outer orbital early engagement. Outcomes and investigation findings, Marine Parade, Bridge Street to Eptose Street. So we have a few people here. If you'd like to join us at the end of the time, you can't put your hand up already. But it's not even on the table yet.
It's mostly a process question.
Uh,
Run out of time.
I don't know if we are trying to get this. I would have liked to get it done by 6, but we're not going to get it done by 6. So we will have enough time. So But it is possible to ask questions offline if they're not addressed.
And sorry, my question was going to be, if we don't have time to really delve into the questions we have, what is the process for this to come back? So that's what I'm interested in.
Okay, well,
It's just a shame to make good direction on things when we don't have sufficient time to
yeah,
delve
I
into
think
questions.
cross that bridge if we come to it, and we do have quite a few responses in writing as
Yeah.
well.
We just need time to review the responses.
Yeah. All right, so over to you. If you wanted to give us a presentation and then take questions.
Yeah.
Or, you're welcome to pause and just give me a look, and say, happy to take questions. Yeah, but otherwise I'll ask you to let me hold the questions until you're ready.
Okay,
Good.
thanks. Sorry, we're here to present to the board. The presentation is to provide an update on early engagement and investigational work completed since the board's request last year. We'll take you through what we did, what we heard, how it aligns with the current scope, and what decisions are needed. We'll run through the full presentation first, then open the floor to questions at the end. Right. Right, so we did exactly what the board had asked us to do, and which was in June last year, 2025, the board asked staff to undertake early community engagement before progressing with the project. Since then, we've engaged with schools, local schools, a residents association within the project area, and today we're presenting a summary of that feedback, how it aligns or doesn't align with the current scope, and the investigation findings for Marine Parade between Ridge and Iptide. This is to support the board's decision on next steps. So this is what the project was initially set out to achieve, which is about delivering a practical local cycle connection, linking homes, schools, shops and existing routes, improving everyday safety, especially for students, and doing so in a fit for purpose way in current constraints. At this point, I'll hand over to Kieran, who will talk you through our early engagement.
Thank you. Thanks, Lisa Maria. Just sorry, very quick kind of went on the questions and stuff. Definitely not culture, but I timing didn't align. So after I've done my section, which I'll indicate, then I'm happy to take any engagement related questions. But yeah, then I'll have to excuse myself on the floor. But in terms of the process that we ran, so we reached out to a number of residents associations, most notably the residents associations that reached out to the board several years ago about cycle provision and routes around New Brighton. They were notably the New Brighton Residents Association, South Shore Residents Association, Waitai Beach Residents Association, and then a number of schools who we got feedback before we started the process that there were a number of students who use New Brighton, especially some of the routes that we were proposing to get to and from school. The groups that we didn't hear back from, unfortunately, were the Waitai Beach Residents Association, Avonside Girls and South New Brighton School. And our approach was essentially to attend community residents meetings, have those face-to-face conversations, especially with residents and students, and have face-to-face meetings with school representatives and staff members. So there's a lot of information on the slide, but I'll kind of break down a few of the key things. So some of the most predominant things that came through was the route that runs through Rafferty Domain. The one that runs through the middle that connects to Short Avenue was a main theme that came up from a lot of the residents at the Residents Association meetings. People bringing up the idea that that was a key route for people to connect around New Brighton. Keys Bohill Rookwood roundabout was raised multiple times as being intersection of high safety issues. Safety issues as cars have been observed speeding through the roundabout. And so that related, I guess, to increasing cycle connectivity throughout New Brighton. Going into the more specific meetings, the New Brighton Residents Association, evacuation routes were raised and concerns about evacuation routes, about whether a cycle route would narrow the width of the road. And there was some clarity explained that the proposal would be for painted cycle lanes, and that, there might have been a bit of misunderstanding about what I guess was initially proposed. Off-route cycle routes were also brought up as there were examples about the route that runs along the Avon River, as well as the estuary, such as the estuary Edgewalk, and that a lot of cyclists would prefer to use off-road cycle facilities rather than on-road cycle facilities. Other key routes that people raised are the ones listed there. So through Rauwhiti Domain, Lever Terrace, Palmers Road, New Brighton Road. And those were raised as either ones that residents cycled themselves or knew of people who cycled along them regularly. In terms of New Brighton Residents Association, budget was definitely a big concern and cost. So suggestions that we got about budget being spent in other places, since that was quite a prevalent thing, was around road maintenance, street renewals, maintaining essential services such as water services and transport infrastructure. There was also a perception of visibility. So common comments were residents saying that they didn't really see cyclists around New Brighton, or that they didn't see them using the roads as much as others. And a main theme from the South Shore Residents Association feedback that we received was definitely around evacuation routes, which were some of the same points raised from the North Beach Residents Association. In terms of the school meetings, Shirley Boys High School, we ran a focus group with some of their students, especially the ones who wanted to kind of advocate on behalf of other students. The key routes that they raised were ones that they either cycled themselves or knew that their fellow students cycle along, and they're mentioned in that last point there. Shared paths were brought up as a desirable treatment, as they allowed separation in a relatively easy and safe way, and they were also mostly worried and wanted something to be addressed about antisocial driving behaviour. So this included like being pushed off the road because of cars moving too close into existing cycle lanes, being just antisocial behaviour in general. Risk of being doored when they're in the cycle lane was a big one, and also when they brought up different roundabouts around New Brighton, cars just like speeding around cyclists was a big concern for them as well. When we met with Rauwhiti School, we met with a representative of, I guess, very involved parent who, essentially gave us also their personal feedback, also feedback that they had relayed with the school to get their endorsement. So a lot of the points that they brought up were around making sure that while Rauwhiti Domain would be definitely a desirable route, there was acknowledged that there could be antisocial behaviour in Rauwhiti Domain that she really wanted us to be aware of, and that generally parents wouldn't be comfortable letting their children ride through Rauwhiti Domain, especially if it was quite early in the morning, or I guess with daylight savings when it gets darker at an earlier time. So to just kind of summarise all of those bullet points into some key themes, we definitely found that Rauwhiti Domain was very consistent as a key route. The off-road cycle routes were a lot more likely to be used than on-road ones. Better connection to existing infrastructure is needed. So with the work on Marine Parade nearing completion, being able to make sure that there is cohesion between any new infrastructure and the shared path that being installed there. The roundabout on Keysborough-Rookwood, which I think the board is probably quite aware of that intersection already, and consideration for evacuation routes, especially tsunami events. Yeah, it's, the biggest ones. But that's the end of my section. And yeah, if there's any engagement related questions, I'm more than happy to take those now.
So I think Kim and Alex.
Right, on the engagement side of things, really good, thank you, to see that's taken a lot of time to invest in these groups and get their feedback. It'll be good to still get the feedback from those groups that reached out just yet, so that'd be really good. My question's probably not specifically on the engagements, probably more about the so maybe I'll ask them later.
Cool. Yep. Okay, Alex and then Celeste.
Yeah, specifically about engagement, again, just really want to reiterate what Kim's saying. Mindful of time, hence I'm not going to talk about too much, but really states there's level of pre-engagement. I think it's really important to bring people along with us through these processes, especially when it comes to cycleways and spending, regardless of what the outcome is. It's good that people feel involved. In terms of, I mean, you've got all the different groups here. When you speak to a group, are you speaking to someone that, like the school, for example, has specifically pointed you towards to speak to it? I'm just a little bit concerned about, in terms of the representatives representing the group, whether or not that's the school's view or someone that cycles and the school's now passed on to someone that cycles. Again, this isn't any kind of negative connotation towards anything. I'm just wanting to understand the process of making sure that the representatives are that of the schools and of the groups.
So yeah, when we ran the different engagements and reached out to the schools, we did our best to make sure that we could give them the opportunity to share the information, like with all the students, for example. So one thing that I tried to do was to reach out to the schools to run like a student survey, because I thought that it was really important to be able to hear from the wider student body about this sort of issue. The timing just didn't align in that, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, because one thing, that I didn't actually mention during the presentation was I would imagine that this is the first stage in a longer process, and we still need to be able to reach out to residents on affected routes and the wider New Brighton community, like you mentioned in the other presentation. So just because we didn't do it here doesn't mean that we can't reach out to them later. But yeah, in terms of like Rafferty School, for example, that was definitely a situation where they were quite transparent that they didn't have the capacity at that time to be able to get a full board of trustees to give us their thoughts, or even all the staff, but they passed on. Yeah, they delegated essentially. So we always try to give schools and different organisations and resident associations the ability to give us what they think is their fairest representation.
Thank you. That's really helpful, I think, just in terms of understanding the process. It's something that we don't hear too much about. And just in terms of next steps, I think it'd be really good to share, or whatever happens next, if we are going in some form of engagement and consultation, would be like, I'd really request that try and push the school to share the Let's Talk link with students and families, because obviously that's where we get most of our responses from. It'd be really good to have them all consolidated. Thanks, Bob. Thank you.
Celeste.
Thank you for the engagement work. It's really great. Like Alex said, it's in the pre-engagement to get those general themes. I think it's helpful regardless in terms of feedback from the board. In terms of people's travel patterns, do we have any information about what routes people typically take in terms of the typical desire lines? We heard that a lot of people like referring to Main, for instance, but do we know, for the high school, which routes they're typically taking? I see them identify some roads as being unsafe, but are they taking alternative routes because those routes are unsafe? Because as part of scoping the next stage of work, it'd be interesting to see that we're delivering, if we're looking at supporting an upgrade to infrastructure, that we're putting in places that people are already likely to use it, and just enhancing, because the funding is quite limited. So sort of maximising that. So did you hear any specific information, or can we get further information around that? Is there any sort of mapping we were going, students who are travelling to Rupeti school are travelling typically from along these roads, and high schools are typically travelling, you know, sort of like a heat map.
In
I don't know
terms
if
of
that's
the,
a bit complex, but
no, I know what you mean. In terms of the raw data, I mean, that wasn't something that we collected, but I think that the travel demand management team has some sort of data on that. So that's something that we could definitely take
Yeah.
away and have a look into. In terms of the key routes that was noted there, not only are those, I don't think it was clear when I was explaining, sorry, those were the routes that they explained to us that they took on a daily basis to get to and from school. So we wanted to make sure that we were targeting the roads that they would be using, because we essentially, when we had these meetings, showed them that kind of overview map that we showed at the first meeting, and kind of just said, yeah, does this align with the routes that you guys would take? And those were some of the routes that they told us were the most common routes that they took. So it was a good stress test to see if we were actually on the right line, or if we weren't, and probably lean more to there's another area that we could be focusing on.
it'd be good to see a bit more information and the direction from the board to determine what the next steps are, but my preference would be we're still doing further engagement before we move to any form of consultation, because I think we're still trying to get a sense of what is a good use of funding that we have. In terms of when they talked about local cycle connections, it's connecting things that obviously we've got some schools that have moved into the northern part of the area, so just want to make sure we're kind of getting the best bang for buck, and I just want to make sure that we've got enough information before we get that steer. But that'll come through, I think, after you leave, so we'll find out later.
Right, Kim?
So we'll move the other.
No, we're still on engagement.
Interesting engagement question. Thanks. Okay, with engagement, then when it comes to the schools, following on from what Celeste's just said, could it be that the staff work with schools and the actual schools do a survey within their own, asking those questions on how many cycle, what route they actually take? So it would be something that perhaps you don't necessarily need to do yourself, but you can help guide them as to questions they could do, or support them through that. By timeline, gather the information, get back to you as a pre-consultation.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely something we could do for sure. I mean, I guess the only key consideration is just the amount of time, I guess, that it could take, and just making sure that we align with their terms and how much capacity that they have. I mean, just as an example, this engagement period was roughly like 6 to 8 weeks off the top of my head. And so I don't have the direct number, but the amount of capacity, I guess, that they had within that time, probably because it was the beginning of the year, they had quite low capacity to run that sort of survey. But that doesn't mean, again, that we wouldn't be able to do it like after this meeting. We could work very closely with them to make sure that we get surveys like to all of the students. And we have teams that have a very close relationship with the principals, so that we've been working with as well. So yeah, we can revisit those relationships. Absolutely.
And just a general question, did you actually get, we were feeding questions to you guys? Did you actually get an email from yourself? Celeste got some answers to her questions, but.
They were sent to you just before the meeting started.
Oh, okay, so I haven't sent this. So yes, we do need some more time to digest all this information.
Right. Last question on engagement is from Kelly.
Just following on Alex and Kim's points, how quickly could you do a survey of the school kids as to how many of them cycle and what are the points where they feel the most problem? Because that would cut to the chase, as far as I can see. Because but like Alex says, I don't know who's answering this, whether it's the school or the kids, because at the end of the day, they're all sort of feel vulnerable.
The amount of time to be able to put that sort of survey together would probably take probably like 4 or 5 weeks, and that is to basically put go through the checks and balances, and also make sure that it's all good with the schools, and working within their timelines. I'd say 4 to 5 weeks is a reasonable amount of time.
I just think that information will be really useful.
Point of misrepresentation. I just want to make it very, very clear that I'm not saying that the schools can't speak for these students. and I'm comfortable with the schools doing so. It was just more for me to understand who reaches out on behalf of the school. So I do want to make that very clear, Kelly. I'm not saying that schools aren't in a position to do that.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Was really sitting under misrepresentation, but anyway, now, like that last question.
It's not a question, just a comment around that.
So that's less helpful than a question.
Might be helpful, no.
We have a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
If we keep tacking on more and more questions, we're not going to get through the agenda.
Understood. Nonetheless, just wondering, in terms of, instead of a survey, whether we can look at a focus group, maybe a smaller sample of students, that might speed up the feedback, because students can chat to their peers, so that could be an alternative option if we're looking for further feedback, but we know what the direction is. Thank you.
I can update both and we get taken offline. Thank you, Karen. This is fun. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right.
Okay, I'll move on to the suggested next steps, which are, possible options. So just to highlight, we're not recommending a solution, we're just presenting possible options. And this is based on what we've heard. There isn't a single clear direction without trade-offs. And to walk you through the options briefly.
You're saying there's no ideal solution and we have to make a decision that ultimately weighs up various factors. Sorry, I'm being facetious. I'd just like to remind elected members that there is never a perfect solution. And unfortunately, we won't get that. So it's good to be reminded. Thank you.
Okay, cool. I'll move on. So just to walk you through the options briefly. One being to refocus within the scope, and to note with that particular option that the Rawiti domain is outside the transport scope. The next one would be to amend the route. That means that one goes for the quieter streets and the off-road options. The other option was or is pause and rescope. That means basically align with the community priorities and funding as well. So these points out again that these options reflect the feedback and the realities of the scope and delivery possibilities. Okay, and now we will go ahead with the questions. Anybody with questions?
I imagine there is, but Kim has got it first.
Thank you for that. From what I'm hearing and what we've heard from the community groups, I've been to 3 of them, public meetings, one at Brighton, North Beach and South Shore Residents Associations. It's exactly what this first bullet point says. The strongest community support was for the existing through the Rawiti domain. There's other ones like Richards Way and the terrace and things. Those existing footprints now, shared paths and things. So even though it says that that is not within the scope, can it just not be part of the scope, or do you have to go to the pause and rescope? Or can it be a combination of both? Because clearly I think so far pre-engagement, I think we do need to get all the questions that have been asked today and all the suggestions gathered in before perhaps there is a next step apart from those ones of going back to schools and getting some more of that information, but also looking into the existing paths. So does that then require that there has to be a pause and rescope?
Yes, so
can it be done in tandem?
If the Rawiti domain is that option is considered, it's pointed out. I've just pointed out that that area it's not part of the transport scope, right? In fact, it's part of parks, right? So if that had to be considered, then it's not part of transport. It's not part of the transport capital program. It's within another department altogether.
And so could there be teamwork there?
So
No, it doesn't work that way.
So the challenge is, buckets of money. Transport has a bucket of money, it works for transport. Unfortunately for the domain, that's within the park, so we have to be advocated for the long-term plan.
You're welcome to join us at the table if you'd like.
Sorry.
That's great, yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, so we can look at how we're developing connections to the domain, but the physical pathway or the upgrade of the pathway through the domain, that has to be considered through the long-term planning process and the budget allocation process.
Sure. That's great, thank you.
Again, I just, this is hopefully helpful. Rupert Bull is here from Parks. Do you have anything to contribute, Rupert?
Oh, look, I definitely think to your point that teamwork can 100% exist. We've got similar examples where transport networks run up to Hagley Park and they transport funded routes through park assets. So I'd like to think that we can come to, a council outcome.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so I think, sorry, what I should have said is definitely agree with that. I think it's not just, so I'm a favour of planning properly and acting fast, and so it's having a bit of a pause, having a bit of a hurry, thinking about how do we get within the same room, same outcome, and then stepping forward about what is that bigger plan, how do we achieve it, who pays for what.
Yeah, that sounds great. My understanding is that there is something in Rafferty with parks, that those conversations would be really good to have together, and also the scope of the questions that I've sort of written today, sorry I didn't read it because it just got to me before the meeting, is around that collaboration of the safety aspects that the community are quite clearly saying as everyone's coming out, like the roundabout and even crossings, like if they were to have shared path through Rafferty, for example, then there needs to be a crossing from Crossbow Road from Shore.
Absolutely. So I think there historically has been a minor safety improvement project in the roundabout. So it's having a little bit of, okay, this is our desire, this is the overall route we want to achieve. Having a bit of a coordination meeting, maybe a bit of an informal workshop around these are the different chunks, this is how you can develop it, this is where the money's going to come from. Potentially having a look at, well, this is how much we've got on budget, whereas this is what needs to be advocated for in the long-term plan. So it might not be we deliver straight away, but it's what is that picture and how do we get there.
It'd be great to have that, Hui, as you say, and also there's not an immediate, until we get some of this information back, it's not like we decide this in the next few months. There is time to sort of be trying to work with a plan and have come up with a really good plan that's going to service that community, which I know that you're working towards. So it's encouraging. So.
All right.
It wasn't meant to be the middle finger, by the way.
Celeste, and was that were you raising a hand? Yes. Okay.
I really like that suggestion about sort of having another Hui and just looking at it, and maybe in terms of the kind of network planning, or what do you call it, transport planning, just sort of chunking it out and going, if we were looking at if they were kind of prioritising the routes, saying some of it was through Rafferty domain, doing it in a staged way. So we don't say, well, we have to wait for all the funding to come through before we get this bit completed. Because if this is the budget we've got, obviously we want to spend it, rather than just deferring things indefinitely, knowing that funding can disappear at any time. So I'm keen to sort of spend the time coming up with a good plan like we did with Marine Parade, making sure that it's well supported by the community, but also understanding, sorry, I'm not explaining it very well, sort of what we're trying to achieve. Because I think at the moment, obviously the option is kind of in the community's mind, it's sort of a specific route. But if the feedback is that that isn't the highest priority kind of route that people want to take, or the design line isn't there, what are the other opportunities we have, given that funding's always a challenge? So if it's just, upgrading these two, connections, whether it's a roundabout or a section of the road, maybe even Keys Road could be another option. Is that clear for the community in the short, the long term, getting that one bit of road done well, and then we can apply for funding to do the next section through parks, maybe that can come party with the next section, but just sort of looking at where those kind of opportunities are. So we're keen to find out maybe after this meeting what the process would be if we kind of further refining the concept, if that makes sense. We don't want to spend forever doing that, but
I think once again, it's so I'm a transport planner by trade, not an engineer. So for me, it's all about thinking what is the bigger picture, what are the outcomes we want to try and achieve, and then what are the steps we need to do to take those outcomes. I think for part of that is for the Eastern and Outer Orbital and bucket of money, we've got a specific scope. And so it's having a bit of advice internally around how we progress this.
Yeah. And if that requires a bit of a rescope, then I personally am open to that, because I think that's the value of getting community feedback, is to sort of go where is the strongest usage got to come from. And I think what you guys have done is really fantastic, so I really appreciate what you've done to this point.
All right, Alex.
Yeah, I think I kind of total what Kim and Celeste is saying. At this stage, based on what's been consulted on earlier, I think we struggle to get. I appreciate as elected members, you'll hear me say a lot that we don't. The community is really pivotal in terms of our direction, but we are elected to make decisions on behalf of the community. But I don't feel like we've been in a position to really accept any report at this stage based on what's being proposed. I think that's why pre-engagement is really good, and I appreciate that. But like everyone's saying, I think it's about a matter of prioritisation. Where the community wants to see and where they feel they'd be safer. And right now, I don't think it's really been addressed, and it's not really achieving the outcomes. And that's not because of any of the work that you're all doing. I want to make that very clear. But I think what we've seen as part of this pre-engagement is that there needs to be a fair bit more work on this project.
All right. Any further questions? I think that the feedback from coastal members has been pretty clear. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And so we now have QE2 Park. Please join us. Alex has already got his hand up, so.
Oh, I'm happy to take this.
Yeah, you're welcome to join us at the end of the table. And I'll just check with them. Are we happy to take this as read? Take it as read, like in terms of your question.
I would be quickly keen just to highlight a little bit of the differences between the three options in terms of the car. I think the car park lab was just very briefly.
Okay, could you run through the different options? Otherwise, take it as read, and then we'll have some questions.
Okay, well, thank you for the time. So this is the very early engagement, I guess, with the board, with a briefing for what is going to be the second development of an artificial turf hub. The first one was at Wigram, which is proceeding well, and this is the second site. So if you just go through the presentation, this is really an extension of the 2019 master plan that was produced for the site, which included one field. And since that time in 2019, we've developed the sports field network plan, which has identified 6 artificial turf hubs around the city with 2 fields per site. So we have really just 2 options that we've progressed with for the site, and really the only difference is where the changing room goes. Now, it's marked on the drawing as a pavilion. I tend not to use that word because it's a bit broad, could mean all sorts of things. So it is a changing room with public toilets around the outside that are accessible. And the 2 fields are straddled where the original location was for one field, but in this option 1, you can see that the changing room that is labelled as a pavilion is up at the top, just below the events area, the proposed events area. And the reason for having it up there was that it could also be used as part of the goings on in the events area when there's an event. The second option that we have been looking at is moving the changing rooms down between the 2 artificial fields, which is our standard model for the Wigram site and the standard model for the other 4 sites that are currently being investigated. So really that's where we're at. There's no decision on that, but that's probably the question that you wanted to discuss a bit further. And then if we just look at how that sits with the original master plan on the left, and I've shown option 1 there on the right, you can see where the difference lies. Basically, by having 2 fields, it just involves pushing the event space north, but keeping it and rotating it probably by 90 degrees. So that's where we're at the moment.
Alex?
It is a question, but I will give context really to members because it kind of feeds into my question. So I know that elected members have made an exchange that kind of the first point of concern for me was that we initially heard from the events team that this development would result in potentially not being able to be used for events anymore. So I met with John Pillow and a number of other staff to go through that, and they reassured us that that wouldn't be the case and we can make it work. So I guess my first question, or my preferences for the, in terms of the pavilion being here, answered my first question about, the potentially multi-use space or the ability to use it as part of the event. So my preference, if you come to us with a report, would be that the pavilion would be at the north. It seems quite a waste not to do it. My second question is whether or not event promoters have been kind of consulted as part of this, because the event space, is that within this project?
No.
No. Okay, so I guess consulting with the promoters would be quite important, because I think something that will feed into me when making a decision here is whether or not there is enough room for the event space as it stands. I'll be concerned about signing off on a plan before we've got the full information about the event space. I appreciate that we do have a really important obligation to provide sports field, and that is the priority here. No dispute about that, but I guess I wouldn't want this to go in when there's potentially ways to resolve issues with the event space, but then that being done too late and we can't fix it. It's kind of irreversible. So if you could touch base with the events team and make sure that that's considered in the report, and potentially touching base briefly with the promoters as part of that, so we know that we get the best bang for buck with both of these options, rather than kind of going fully supporting this when we could potentially change something slightly and miss down on the great space there as well. Again, priority from my perspective is the sports fields, but I wouldn't want to lose such a great event space, and I think residents have made that clear as well.
Yeah, we have got together an engagement plan which does itemise all the target audience for engaging with them, and that does include Christchurch New Zealand Multi Events Limited, a list of all the targeted stakeholders. So clearly that would happen.
Okay, cool. Could you touch base with the events team to add all?
Yep, RSE is all part of that.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you.
All right, Kelly and then Kim.
Statements or questions?
Pardon?
Statements or questions?
Questions.
Questions.
It's yeah.
How brilliant. I think option one is a really smart idea. And I'm just sort of thinking, if there is a protracted engagement around the event space, which we've got event space possibilities all over the city, will this slow this very long awaited project down?
I'd hope not. With the event space, the other piece of information about that site is that there is a playing field area to the right of the event space, which I think has hosted Australian rules football, and I believe that it'll be possible for that to move to the area that's being developed on Hagley Park off Riccarton Avenue. So as you say, our RSE are very good at moving events around and finding alternative locations. So we've still got some way to go. It'll take at least 12 months before we even we're ready to go to construction as a minimum. So I think during that time we should be able to resolve all the users.
Good to know. Thanks.
Kelly, Kim, and then Celeste, and then I think Alex again.
Thanks. Yeah, agree with Alex there, and in the sense of the use of the event space. But I'm just thinking about the priorities of the local user groups that use the sports field more regularly than we have events. So the positioning of the toilets and pavilion, whether that's going to be a higher priority than just events. I mean, it's ideal to have a bit of both, a bit of a toilet or something down there in the middle, and then something over there that can be shared by the other park users and the events team. But the majority of the times, on my understanding, could be wrong, is that the local groups will be using it, so the facility, the toilets should be closer.
Yeah,
within the middle.
I think you're probably correct, particularly there's a bit of discussion going on with the two schools, big users during the day, from what I understand. I mean, Rupert, you might want to talk a bit about that.
We continue part of the engagement, talk to the schools and how they use that through best utilisation through the whole day. So you're right, it's a very good point. It's just weighing up those two options of the demand.
Yeah, because events are really good at providing those wonderful waterways. So,
Kim, let's just do the steam.
oh, you want a ablution? What do you
No,
call
no,
it?
steam.
No. A stand as well?
Will there be a steam?
Is it gonna be a stand? Kelly wants to know.
For the turfs.
What's the
It'll be very tight.
Yeah, and that's probably the case for all the sites we're looking at, to be honest.
Do you have any more questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Thanks very much. That's
All right.
very exciting.
Celeste and then Alex.
Thank you. So in terms of the process, so you'll engage with the schools and obviously the other more local users of the park.
Yes.
And then we will get that feedback as part of the decision report or prior to.
Part of a decision report.
Right.
Unless we submit it early, I don't quite know what the process is. Normally we put it as part of the decision report.
In terms of the, I don't want to, again, drag things out for too long because you want to see progress, but I think it's making sure that whatever we do is take into account those things, so we're not at the point of making a decision and going, actually, we haven't landed on the right outcome. So in terms of the pre-engagement stuff, it'd be helpful to know a bit prior to the decision report, if there was any concerns, say, from the event, organisers and local clubs in the school, just making sure that while they might not agree and everything, what the key concerns or things that they liked are.
Yeah.
So whether it's around changing sheds, the location of those, we actually don't know. Do we have changing sheds as part of this?
Yes.
Because it said in there, but I thought.
That's the pavilion.
Okay. So those kind of questions around where the key needs are, making sure that we're aligning it. I know we've got funding constraints as well, but just getting that early would be good.
Yep, that's fine. Thank you.
Can I just point something out with the local clubs? We will be, the stakeholder engagement will be done through the RSOs. So the clubs will contact the RSOs and mainly football or Canterbury Rugby, and then we will then talk with them through the sport network plan. That's sort of how
It's just that sometimes with that sort of thing, it's quite high level, so we don't actually get that really specific site-specific feedback. So it'd actually be helpful for us to get visibility of that through the process. Good, thank you.
All right, Alex.
Yeah, this is a question, a couple of them. Kim's point kind of raised this, is the toilets and pavilions. Is there any way as part of the report we can kind of get a blueprint of what that building would look like? Because, for events, I wouldn't be thinking event patrons would be using the toilet. I think in terms of the changing room facilities, it might be a good green room or operation space for events that are being held rather than toilets themselves. So that'd be really helpful, like we did with the rooms for the club rooms for the Linwood League, would be great. As part of the report, could I request, this is obviously up to you guys what you put in it, but I'd really love to see just a specific heading about the event space. I do appreciate it's out of scope, but I think as council we do make quite a lot of decisions within units and through no fault of anyone's that doesn't actually take into consideration other things that are happening very close by. I really hate to see that happen. I've made that clear. Just in terms of Kelly and Kim's point, so to see that consultation about that wouldn't really drag out anything. This is going to take 12 months anyway. I think the concern with the promoters was that the other side of the gymnastics might be as suitable when the events take to pass that on as well. So just part of that there. Lastly, Chrissy, I could ask this, so let me know if it's outside the scope. But sorry, but around the master plan, there's a whole bunch of lighting.
around where, sorry?
Around the whole park, there's new pathways and stuff. There's no lighting there. Has there been any engagement with the different units about lighting, or is your kind of remit only the sports field? Because I guess I'm concerned that we kind of need lighting all the way around the park.
Well, the fields will have lights.
Yeah.
Of course, floodlights. You have to have that to maximise their use, but the lighting around the rest of the park, I'm not sure if I can answer that. Do you know?
Yeah, I think it would just be a consideration. If we're attracting people to use the venue at night, then we would want to make the rest of the park as safe as possible. So we would definitely look into that surrounding side.
Brilliant. Do you know if it's in the master plan?
Not off the top of my head, I'd have to go into detail, but we can definitely talk about planning team who was involved in the master plan around that.
It's the same as with Linwood Park, where we don't ordinarily light park, but we're lighting it at night and people are there. When we turn off the lights, people need to be able to get out.
I think just one more thing that I think is quite important when you're considering your planning your details is obviously the play spaces going in north. So some sort of way to connect the two spaces is really important, because quite a lot of kids would probably like to play on that, while their brothers, or sisters or siblings are playing sport. Just trying to integrate that as much as possible would be great.
Okay, good.
All right. No, all right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. I didn't introduce Gareth, I should have done that. So Gareth Ford is taking over this project for me. I'm retiring, trying to, in about 3 weeks, once the stadium opens. Yes, this has been my last community board meeting in this role, so thank you very much for.
And how many years have you been at the council?
Only 5, but it's gone very quickly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, hopefully the last 3 weeks goes whatever pace you want it to go.
Yeah, fast, I think.
Right.
That's all. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. So just a 1 minute break for us to catch our breath.
Well,
They're always streamed.
That wasn't. Sorry.
We're live.
We're live. All right. We are back. We're out doing our last item for today, which is the Waitai Community Board Plan Workshop engagement results. We have
Thank you.
presentation from Bernard Boyd.
So I've not done a presentation intentionally. I didn't want to get sort of. Anyway, professional.
There will be no handing of Lincoln.
So I haven't done a presentation intentionally. Everything's attached to your report, because I didn't want to get bogged down into doing another dead by PowerPoint. I think you probably had enough today. What I've put attached is the engagement results. I was really pleased. I know that it was 60 on submission, but it may not sound a lot, but actually on the board plans, that's a really good number, especially compared to some of the others. One of the things that we did as well, I worked with Hannah, who's our engagement advisor. She's amazing. We also put a quick poll in there, because I also recognise and listening to different elected members that there can be a barrier to sitting down and doing a formal submission. So it was just quick react poll on there as well, just to give a bit of an idea of what some people would think on the Let's Talk page, so the consultation page. So it gave people a chance to be able to overall react to what the plan was. So again, it gave just again another touch point for people just to be able to engage. So you've got all of the feedback. One of the things that we did just before we went live, there was a little bit of confusion around what priorities we were going to put forward. So we actually went out with 10 of the priorities, because it was a little late to come back to the board and sort of rehash everything. So what would be really good is board to have a discussion today. Hopefully you've had a read through the feedback from the community and had a bit of an opportunity to think. Be good to confirm the priorities that you want to proceed with, and ideally confirm if there's one that you'd like to pull out. One of the things that I'd probably say is, don't forget, this isn't set in stone. As priorities are ticked off, there's the ability to lift another priority up into its place. When we had the earlier workshops, we talked a bit about how that would actually send a really positive message to the community, as well as to be able to say that we completed something fully, rather than having really broad priorities with lots of things under them that never quite get that final takeoff. So I think, again, it's your plan. It's up to the board to determine. Probably if I were to recommend, I would look at perhaps one of the coastal priorities, just because there are more of those. We went out with the extra coastal one, and that would help balance between the wards. But there's no rule saying you have to have an exact split between the wards. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions.
That's over to
questions.
Yeah, Kim's had her hand up first, though.
No, that's right.
So
if I may though, so Kim emailed a couple of questions, so I can quickly take those off. They may be ones that you've been asking you. So you had a question around those comments. So also included in your agenda was comments from the various units of what all of the board teams did. Once we completed the engagement on your board plan, we went to the relevant units. So I asked Cindy to do that, because she's with relationships with all of those. The staff provided comment back, so we've included that. So one of the comments is PC12 are supportive. That's the PC12 team, because there was the comment around working with the chat team, civil defence, and plan change 12. So they're the ones that are looking after the coastal. It's escaping, but it's the coastal environment and change. The inclusion of the major cycle route. So that was what I was talking about, an extra priority kind of slipped in at the end. I think there was some confusion over what was going to be added, and as to how roughly organised by the most supportive to the most contentious. Is that the comment from the engagement team? Is that how?
Yeah.
I think that so what they were saying with that is you had some of the priorities that were very more obviously supported, so they had either more reacts on them or more the submissions came through as saying
definitely support this priority. I think perhaps contentious isn't the right word, but where the support was a lot more mixed. So you would have had more people saying, yeah, definitely want to proceed with that, and some people saying, I'm not sure that that one should be a priority. So that's what the engagement team would have been. But anyway.
Before that, I just don't need to comment on this right now, coastal members, but I think that the easiest way of solving the priorities is for coastal members to agree with the coastal priorities together and let the rest of the board know in advance, so that, because it's, and remembering also that there's 9 and that the resilience is effectively coming out of Linwood. So, which covers everyone, I know, but just bearing those things in mind. Anyway, we'll go to questions. Yeah.
Definitely appreciate that. Thank you, Chris. Thank you everyone for your work on this. Yes, for me to understand the project, first of all, I had quite a bit of feedback from people saying that the consult document, even though it's supposed to be simplified, was actually a bit confusing. And even to the point where some staff actually had to say, well, do this step and do that step, and you go right down to the bottom and press that. So there was a bit of confusion around that. I think what I did get out of reading all of the submissions was when I did my own, who actually wrote down the priorities, so I went down every single one. And because people did take the time to prioritise, even though, they seem to put in order what priorities they had, and it aligned with their comments as well. So when I went through that, for Linwood, obviously it was the Waitai lights that were.
That's Burwood.
But
question.
Okay, so Burwood, yep, sorry. And the Bromley Compost and the Smith Street Service Station. So Burwood was obviously the Waitai lights and the Marshlands Hall. So for coastal, the first one that came through was the New Brighton Mall at 33, North Beach Car Park Freedom Campus, and there were 3 that specifically only spoke about freedom camping, but the other 27, because I think the wording that was popped in there.
Is there a question?
Was a bit confusing, yes. So then we had 30 for the freedom campers, Roughly at 27, the bridge at 19, and resilience 15. So sort of on face value, taking it like that, I think there's quite a clear mandate as to what, as well as taking into consideration, things like the signatures of 800 people and that sort of thing, and all the feedback we've had from community with their complaints about freedom campers, and of course, the Brighton Mall is a no-brainer, and Roughly Schoolboys children's safety, given about the Eastern Out Water. So lots of questions, but just to make those points.
Oh, sorry, I said, is there a question? You said yes, and then you said no.
But so when it comes to things like the freedom camping stuff, yes, the board can actually do something with the CEO. So, my question would be quick wins, unlike the interim thing, like the board writing to the CE to ask for a temporary thing. And I know that we've had some information back on the questions that I had. I haven't gone through that yet because it's only about half an hour I came. Yeah. Really keen to explore that more, but I think there could be a quick win there until the Freedom Camping Act can be reviewed. So yeah, it was a good question. Was a bit of a Kelly Act, that one, wasn't it?
Oh no. Okay.
I really agree that through this need to get together and have a chat.
Yeah, I think
no
that's
need to agree right now.
Celeste and then Alex.
Question.
I mean, it's a bit awkward to do it now because we haven't had a chance to chat. So I
don't think you should do it now.
Yeah, so my preference is the 3 of us have a conversation.
But you're welcome to articulate whatever you'd like at this point, bearing in mind.
Questions first.
It's questions.
Yeah, so that would be my preference. I think I agree that I think the consultation, the way it's been structured, was a bit confusing. So just a bit of feedback there. Peters Road, I was a bit confused about staff advice because they talk about separating into 2 projects. But it is the ancillary works, they're all one project in a sense. So it'd be good to understand that. And I also would be interested in getting some staff advice on if Coastal was to drop a priority, not drop, but say put one forward first, whichever one it is. So we've got 3, so one moves down the prioritisation list. because they're all priorities, obviously, what would staff advice be in terms of their view on which would be the priority in terms of need funding? So for example, if you're trading off between graffiti safety versus the ancillary works, what is the cost if we don't push for funding for the Peters Road? Because in terms of potential impacts to community, that has to be factored in. So for instance, it would be hard for me to advocate for taking Peters Road off if there was no budget, if we needed to have the board plan to get the budget, basically, because the potential impacts of not having funding to complete that project, it gets a pretty significant for our community. So that to me wouldn't be acceptable risk to take that off the list.
So I guess,
that's a very long-winded.
What kind of?
There's a question.
There's a question.
No, I said it's not a political question, like, can staff really answer that if really?
No, I can give it a go. I can give it a go. A bit of guidance. So the first part around staff suggesting it's split into two, what I did there was I've split what they were talking about. See, the two parts in the why this matters, that's the bit that they're talking about, sort of separating so that they can be advocated for separately for the LTP. In terms of the board plan isn't the only things that the board are going to advocate for in the term. So if you do choose for something not to be in there, it can still feature in the board submissions to the annual and long-term plan. The difference is obviously board plan priority gets a higher ranking, but it doesn't stop you promoting other things. Or I shouldn't even say ranking, but in terms of the development of the long-term plan, the first things that all of the unit heads are looking at is all of the board plans to see how they can fit things into the LTP. So yeah, it's a priority and you'll have more than 9 priorities throughout the term, but you can still advocate for other things.
So, I mean, and I would say, like, just from a, even been around a bit, and also that I'm willing to say that, you know, these are the things that that the board are prioritising as part of our LTP submission, and to keep pushing for all of those things. So I don't think that it's one of those projects is gonna end up undone because it wasn't in the. It's slightly different to the resilience stuff, because like for instance with the Pages Road thing, which I really strongly support, that is, you know, it's in the LTP. It is a defined project.
So I guess my question, and it's one that I'll probably ask some staff before we have a conversation, is does timing matter as to which one we put forward?
You need to have the conversation for it to be in the report tomorrow.
So we have to make the decision now?
No, you don't have to make the decision now. You just need to.
Chris has to complete his report and that needs to be signed off. The agenda closes
by tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'd rather we chat about it after this.
Yeah. Can you chat about it?
Right.
Yes, it's fine.
Thanks.
Sorry, Celeste, you were.
No, I mean, that's probably enough for now.
Okay, I had
a question.
It ultimately was a question that was very helpful. Thank you. Yeah, I know, side cheering, but no more side cheering. So Alex, you can ask a question if you like.
Brilliant.
Please keep it focused.
On the priorities in the draft plan, because it's not alphabetical. I was just curious to know why the order's in there.
So you'll end up with a formatted document. So part of the reason for the order was purely, some of it is the length of the text and how it will fit in the plan so that it looks nicely. In terms of how it is in the agenda, it's not in a prioritized order.
Yeah,
that's what you're asking.
No, I acknowledge it. I think just in terms of readability, my question would be, would it make sense, because we've got the capital program watch list, people reading through that might, although it makes it pretty clear, would it make sense to put kind of the capital projects on top, so they read that and then read so they don't think the capital project's being missed because they don't read, you know.
So your actual board plan will be more designed. So this is just a Word document essentially. So I think early on, I can't remember, but early on I showed you a sort of template of what it's going to look like. So yeah, it'll be a lot clearer that these are the priorities, and then you've got your watch list and the wastewater treatment plan, they're separate. So they're still things that you're keeping an eye on, but they're just not gobbling up your 9.
Yeah, thank you. And just question, am I correct in thinking if coastal sorted, the rest of it sorted, was there any answer any concerns?
That was my hope, and I think that looking at Jackie, that Jackie and I are fine.
We're happy
So,
taking one that's on the whole board and only two accounts, we're okay with that.
the Burwood, and Burwood are happy with the one only lights plus Marshland plus, what was the other one?
Intersection.
Intersection.
Yeah, no, we're very happy with those.
Yeah.
Right, okay, should we break?
Oh, sorry, this is another question, just wanted to make a comment about the staff feedback from the Waimori Lights. Know that they are getting the upgrades. I'm happy to take on the staff feedback about the additional lights being out of budget, but would like the CPTD report about the safety, because I think that was the priority. So if it's different safety measures rather than the lights.
Yeah, and given what was said today about lights, that if you're gonna put in lights, then when the lights are off, people need to be able to get out safely. So yeah, there is also, I was talking to Rupert the other day, and he said that there is they are trialing some new portable lights that are potentially just as effective and much cheaper for that yes, some clubs might be able to have, and also means that they're secure too. Yeah, so it's a possibility. Is there a question? Clarification, yeah.
My understanding is tomorrow on the council's agenda is the capital works update for March, and part of that is they've got the New Brighton Bridge on it, and it's got like deferred or at risk. I mean, some of these boxes that they put on there, get a little bit alarming, and it's quite 2028, so it's quite a way out. So what I'm thinking is, when you've got a project that far out, and you've got a project that's really kind of for safety for kids, then the question is that not your priority.
That sounds like
They're not the ancillary works. The ancillary works aren't in there because they're not funded.
So that's what I mean, because the bridge isn't going to be done till then. So we've got some time to be able to do that, like the living document that we have. Like once the bridge starts to get those things, we're going to know, well, hey, need these roads, at the same time, we might be involved with everybody.
Explain the process there, because the reason those works aren't, because they could be done ahead of the rest of some of those roads, like Pratt Street and others, are in poor condition because we've got no money or budget to do any basic upgrades. So when people were talking about getting that work done, we need to put money on budget. So we don't have to wait for the bridge to be completed in order for some of that work to be done.
True, but I suppose my argument would be is that those roads aren't heavily used roads, and they're not like top priority compared to the Lever Terrace or the Marine Parade or those sorts of ones. The higher priorities at the moment, those small streets don't have the count.
I mean, yeah, that's something we should probably discuss.
Yeah, it's better in the work before we adjourn. Politically, there's quite a lot of support for the ancillary works around council's table, which may mean we don't necessarily need the board plan as much to advocate for it versus just thoughts.
Well, I think, council members can discuss that.
Let's discuss that. That might not be quite crude.
What time did you want to go home?
So you don't
without us.
Right.
No. Make a decision during this meeting, so it's not a decision making meeting, but I need your steer so that I can, because.
So just process wise, is that it's quite, council members, it would be useful so that Chris knows what best reflects the will of the board to put it in the agenda, so that when we get the report, it reflects what we have discussed.
So just summarising, New Brighton Mall, we've all agreed to this.
Let's have a conversation.
Never mind. You guys was going to get you an answer.
Yeah.
So, but it's not a decision meeting. Yeah. So when it comes to the board is well within its powers and right by majority to amend it in any way that we see fit.
Yeah.
What is very unhelpful for as a general display of governing competence, but also just for our state of mind, is trying to amend these things all on the fly. So, but I think it's pretty clear where everything sits otherwise. But rather than try and to go round and round circles as the whole board, given the way that it is, given that we've essentially got 3 per ward, it's much better if coastal members can try and resolve it as much as possible. If you can't, then the board can decide.
And the reason for the timeline, just so that you're aware, it's not me being intentionally difficult, but as I know, it's a rare one. But the reason for it is, I think you're all aware, but it's purely because of the LPP timeline and development. We want to make sure, so that's why all of the boards are adopting their board plan. Some have done it this last week, and I think the rest are doing it in this May meeting. It's so that the board have agreed on their priorities, because the development of the LTP pretty much already started, but so you can get it in right at the start, even though the LTP will be adopted in a year's time. We want to make sure that these priorities are forefront of the organisations.
Right. Well, with that in mind, we will end the community board information session. And just after this third to last line, so is whakaeria or whakaeria? All right. Sure. Unihia, ki te uratakandui, kia wā kia maha, te nākau, te tina, te maira, i te arakakata. Koe rā I ro whakaeria arihino, kia tina, uie, tāki.
I got 30 minutes, let's sort this out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Grant.